Good evening and welcome to the March 26th school board meeting. We have some special friends here today that I believe many of us visited last week and did some reading across America. So we'd like to invite our friends from Grinnell here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and anybody that can, please stand and recite it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. That was great. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here. We will get to you guys in just a few minutes, but there's a couple of pieces of business that we have to get to before that. The first is the approval of minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes, the non-public minutes from March 11th.
So moved.
First by Jason.
Second.
Second by Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wilbur and Katie will abstain. The motion passes 5-0-2. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the public minutes from March 11th.
So moved.
First by Jason,
Second.
second by Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Wilbur and Katie abstain, so motion passes 5-0-2. With that, welcome to the board, Will and Katie. We're excited to have you. The first order of the new board business is always to reorganize the board. The 3 years that I've been on the board, if you would like to be nominated for something, please let us know or let me know. I have no problem nominating anyone. So with that, I would open up the nomination for the chair.
I would like to nominate David Clapp for chair.
Okay, we have a first by Michael to nominate David Clapp as chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Michael. So at this point, I would open it up to any conversation or discussion to be had. Does anyone have anything? David, I don't know if you want to speak, or anyone else? Thoughts? Not hearing anything? All right, well, I don't know. I think you've, I don't know. I appreciate the work you've done in the last year as as vice chair. I think you've stepped up a lot of the times, especially when I wasn't here. But I think you exude a lot of leadership. So I would be in favor of that. With that, I will take a roll call vote. Start down the side. Wilbert.
I'll go for Winda.
Excuse me.
I'll nominate Winda.
Sir, are you voting in favor of?
David's been.
Oh, you would like to, so
Oh,
okay, I think I got it. You said you want to nominate Brenda?
Winda.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table right now. We have to resolve that. So if you don't want, if you're not in favor of David, you can say no, or you could, you could abstain, or you can say yes if you do support his candidacy, I guess. But, so no?
Yes. Oh,
Katie?
yes.
Okay, Brenda?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Or chair votes yes. David? All right, that motion passes 6-1. So we do have a new chair. I'll finish up this reorganization and then pass it over to you to take over for the rest of the meeting. Moving on to the second position, which would be the vice chair. Do I have any motions?
Nominate Michael Thiel.
We have a first to nominate Michael Thiel. by
Second.
Jason. Second by David. Any further discussion? All right, I won't have my 2 cents here, but I think you're a worthy candidate, and I think you'll continue to do good work for the district if that gets support. So we'll start at the other side. David? Yes. Chair votes yes. Michael?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, you're the new vice chair. And last but certainly not least is we have a secretary to nominate.
I would like to nominate Katie DeLay for secretary.
Okay.
Second.
First by Michael, a second by Jason. Any further discussion on that? you have something?
Oh, no, no, I'm good.
Yeah, so I think secretary is a great role for someone that wants to get their feet wet their feet wet immediately. Yeah, yeah, slip of the tongue there. Get their feet wet quickly and get entrenched in the business that we do. So thank you for stepping up, Katie. I think, it's a good opportunity to, again, really get to know what we do on the board and have a role in that as well. So with that, I will start. Wilbert? Yes or no? Or yes? Katie?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Congratulations to the new board. Here you go, David, the ceremonial passing of the gavel.
I appreciate the confidence you guys have put in me, and just want to say thank you to Jonathan for the year that we been through. It was ups and downs, tough year, but we did push through. We got through some things that we tried to get past, and it's a big step and hopefully we can move forward this year and kind of get to the next level and get what this district really needs. So thank you. So with that being said, I invite the Grinnell team for their presentation.
So the first thing we want to do is recognize our Volunteer of the Year, Danielle Cunha. So correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, but if I remember correctly, back in 2021, Danielle was registering her son for kindergarten and reached out to the current PTA president and asked how to get involved. And that person said, well, actually, I'm moving on and we don't have a president. So Danielle said, okay. And she's been with us ever since, doing amazing work. She put her best foot forward from the beginning. She brought family life back to Grinnell post-COVID. She came up with some new ideas. She brought a craft fair to Grinnell, which has been so successful. People have been begging her to do a spring craft fair, and we're just sticking with the holiday fair for right now in December. But Danielle has a demanding full-time job. She has 2 very active kiddos, both of whom are now at Grinnell. And she still manages to make time for our families, our teachers, those of us in the office. She really puts her heart and soul into caring for every part of that building and the community it serves. So we appreciate everything she's done, and we look forward to hopefully many more years of Danielle helping us out.
Yes. Thank you.
There's a speech next. Fran says you never stop talking.
No,
So-
that's me.
We have a certificate of appreciation. Volunteers in Education is going to be presented to Danielle Cunha for valued service at Grinnell Elementary School. Thank you so much.
Close so I can hear you when you talk on the microphone. You don't have a... Yeah, okay. I want to take some pictures too.
All right. So we have brought our We Deliver Post Office Club to talk tonight about what they do. In doing some research, as some of you know, this is only my second year as principal at Grinnell, though I've been around Grinnell prior to that. doing some research on the Post Office Club, it actually began in the early 90s at Grinnell. And when it started, it was part of the United States Postal Service sponsorship. And many schools across the nation were part of it. Over the years, it has ebbed and flowed as an organization at Grinnell. And Mrs. DePercio took over a few years ago. Mrs. DePercio and I have been talking about some former initiatives that were done with it to try to bring some of that back, but we wanted to share what they have been doing. I wanted to add a little tribute to the early years of the Post Office Club. That picture was taken in the early 2000s, talking about the postal pride and tradition, and that was a sample stamp that kids had designed during a stamp contest to use for their letters. Overall, what's fun about the Post Office Club, in my opinion, is that it encourages writing for fun among the students and staff, and it teaches kids how to address a letter, which is a skill that some adults need some practice with too. So, you know, it's a good skill for people to have.
And in an age where we're emailing or texting, keeping the love and joy of letter writing alive is so fun to see in the younger kiddos, because I don't know that they always have a lot of opportunity to do that outside of this experience.
So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. DePercio, who is our advisor for the club, and our lovely Post Office Club members.
Hi, thanks for having us. I've been doing the post office, I think 2018 is when I took over from the previous teacher. It's so much fun. As Mrs. Lance said, the kids are writing, they're reading, they're learning how to address the envelope. These kids are seeing how a post office works. There's also a little bit of math involved. Every week we count letters. We add the letters up each week. The postmasters do announcements every Friday morning. That's when we meet, every Friday morning before school. It's a year-long club. But right, they're adding, I think Delilah added how many letters have been written since the beginning of the year. Do you want to say how many?
2,111 letters.
Awesome.
Right.
Wow.
So, and the interest has grown. When I first started, I had one postmaster. Last year we had 2, which was great. This year I have 7 who are interested. So I divided them up into sessions. I want everyone to have a turn. Right, we have 2 postmasters, Kelly and Savannah this year. And then the workers, and they're each going to tell you a little bit about the jobs they do. And Kelly and Savannah are going to read their application essays.
So in order to become a postmaster, they're required to fill out an application and write why they think they'd be an excellent fit for this job.
Okay, I'll go first. So this is my essay. Dear Mr. Percio, I think I should be a postmaster because last year I was in postmail, and last year's postmasters, they taught me a lot. On Friday mornings, I will get up so early I will never be late to get the mail, and I'll make sure everyone comes. Also, I'll get people's breakfast while they are working hard. And when everyone is done with their jobs, I will help you count all the mail and deliver extra mail. And that's why I think I should be a postmaster. I made this a while ago. I want to inspire kids to write and find their passion and be nice. So I think if we be kind to them, they will do the same. I believe we can change the world. I believe we matter, and that we are different, but we are the same thing. I'm human, you're human. You might ask why I signed this. It is so my little brother will grow up and be proud of me, so I will be proud of me. I think all lives matter. No, I know all lives matter. I am so happy I go to the school I go to. If I did not, I would not have found my passion for writing.
All right, so our first job is a sorter, and this is...
Hi, I'm Gabriella. I will explain the job of the sorter. if the card is addressed to upstairs, we put it in the north basket. If it is addressed to downstairs, we put it in the south basket.
Hi, I'm Fla. I'll explain the checkers job. While the mail is being sorted, I take a letter from one of the baskets and I make sure the envelope is addressed correctly. Sometimes the number of the street address is missing, so I make the corrections. We want all the mail to get to the right place and the right person.
Hi, I'm Daphne. I'll explain checker. Once the
Your stamper?
yeah.
Sorry, stamper.
Once checker checks, they pass it to stamper, and I have to make sure that the date on the stamp is correct. Then I will stamp on the top right corner on the letter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lincoln. I'll explain the job cubby. A cubby, once it gets stamped, it gets passed to the person who's doing cubby. They look at the address on it and then they match it to the corresponding cubby.
Hi, I'm Libby, and I'm going to tell you about the helper's role. The helper helps everyone with their jobs. First, I help the sorter, then the checker, then the stamper, and then the cubby. This job makes the post office run smoothly. After the jobs are done, we all deliver the letters to the right class or mailboxes. The helper is a very fun job, and I'm glad I got to tell you about it. Tell you about the helper job.
Do you want to tell them how they have sample letters? We have sample letters for them.
Oh, yeah.
We have sample letters for you so you can write to Grinnell or wherever you would like to write.
So the kids are going to come up and hand you each a letter, and all you'll have to do is you can write to a class, a student at Grinnell, and send it through interoffice mail or stop by and drop it off, and we'll make sure it gets to the correct person, but they'd love to receive something from you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, come stand come just so they can recognize.
Thanks, bud.
Appreciate it.
Do you have any questions for our kiddos? Well, the students do learn cursive, so it can be in either.
Just wanted to thank you guys for coming. I wanted to ask, what do you think are some of the most useful skills that you'll learn from doing this?
What did you say the other day?
To be a leader because like I always like make sure everybody's doing the right jobs, and I like being a leader because I feel like I'm doing something that I like to do and I lead everyone.
That they've learned? Savannah, go ahead, honey.
I've learned how to address letters, and I've learned how a group works together, and it's just been really fun.
Anybody else want to say anything?
What is your favorite part of having a post office at your school, and who's the most important person who's ever sent you a letter?
Does somebody want to tell their favorite part of Post Office Club? Libby, go ahead.
I love delivering the letters. It's really fun to see all the different streets in our in our school and the different addresses.
Libby, can you explain that so they understand, like,
Oh.
the different streets in our school?
Yeah, each like classroom has a different address. So when we deliver the letters, we all know where they're going, and each mailbox has the address on them.
What's your classroom's address?
Oh, trick question.
It's Squash?
Yeah, the Squash Street. Wait, what class were you in? Yes, Squash. Squash.
That's our
Squash Street.
Squash Street. Yeah.
So you're in Miss Ogden's class, so you're in my son's class.
Yes. So Squash Street. And then she asked who you've gotten letters from, who's somebody really important. You want to talk?
Two people who have been making the most letters is Miss Casey and Miss Weiner.
Miss Weiner. They love getting letters from their teachers. The teachers are just as engaged as the students.
It's fun.
Everyone from the custodians, secretaries, kitchen, teachers, everybody participates.
We do. We also write letters to them.
I get kind of sad if a week goes by and I don't get one.
Mrs. Lance wanted me to explain the addresses. All of the addresses to each class is either a fruit or a vegetable because of the grant that we received for the fruit and vegetable program. So, if it's a grade, it's a K for kindergarten, one watermelon way or whatever. So we made them all up to match fruits and vegetables.
I just want to thank Miss Lance and Miss Martin and Mr. Percio. All of you guys were wonderful. It's a little bit daunting sometimes to come up to the microphone in front of, you got a huge audience out here, and of course the millions watching on television that I told you about, right? But you guys did an excellent job. You all spoke up, and you deserve a fantastic round of applause for what you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Very much. Awesome. You were wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, we'll just take a quick recess, and we'll get back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the school board meeting. Our next item on the agenda is the Pinkerton update with Anthony. Pinkerton update, excuse me.
All right, can everyone hear me? All right, so tomorrow is PSATs and SATs, so we're going to get out at around 11:15 for that, but, you know, we're testing all day. For the juniors, it's probably going to decide some of their, you know, college acceptances, so that'll be pretty important for everyone. And me, I'm taking the PSAT.
Good luck.
Thank you. So Pinkerton now has 2 therapy dogs. Just the other day, we introduced Lucy. She'll be joining Luna. Luna just turned 5 months old, so they're moving right along. If you go on Instagram and Facebook, you'll be able to see them. Over the weekend, this past weekend, Adam's Family at Pinkerton, it was a big success. It ran for 3 days, and yeah, it was really good. On the 28th of this month, this Thursday at 6:30, will be Catwalk for a Cause that is held by Astros United, which is a club at Pinkerton that looks to promote mental health awareness. So that's a really good event. I recommend everyone going. I went last year. I plan to go again this week. So Pinkerton is also in need of exchange host families. There will be 21 students coming from Spain in September from the 21st to the 26th. And students at Pinkerton will also have the opportunity to complete the exchange by going to Spain for 2 weeks in June of 2025. So if you're the parent of a Pinkerton student, definitely look into that. You can reach out to the head of the language department at Pinkerton, which is Mark Phelps. And yeah, that's all I have. Oh, and congratulations, Will and Katie. I look forward to working with you both. Any questions for anyone?
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So at this time, we do have delegation individuals next, but I'm going to ask for a motion to move Gale Associates right before delegations. So I accept a motion for that, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any abstentions or no's? All right.
Yep.
Yes, so we wanted to welcome Alan back. Alan is one of the engineers for Gale Associates, who's been working with us on the building facades. He worked on South Range, Derry Village, West Running Brook. So tonight's scope is really on West Running Brook for the facade. We've brought that before the board before. It's not going to require a vote tonight, but we felt it was important for Alan to come talk about as he brought forward to the facilities committee members, the 3 different options for the building facade for West Running Brook. As you know, that the condition of the exterior of that building needs to be replaced. So Alan's going to speak to that and any alternatives that could be done in place of if we have a budget constraint, because we know that we don't have the funds right now to do that. So Alan, if you don't mind, and we did put information in your board packet as well. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you very much for having me here tonight, everybody. So as Jane mentioned, we've been in the process of doing the design development to perform masonry repairs at the West Running Brook Middle School. This includes spot brick masonry replacement, repointing mortar joints, but the bulk of the scope of work was associated with the removal and replacement of the precast concrete banding that goes around the perimeter of the building and currently is displaced at multiple locations. During a previous evaluation report, we brought this to the board's attention that this displaced precast concrete poses a potential fall hazard, specifically at a lot of locations in which the concrete is warped to a point where some of it is actually protruding past the finished plane of the brick masonry surrounding it. So that effort was associated with replacing that and then also incorporating new through-wall flashing to manage some of the moisture infiltration issues that we think is happening within that veneer wall assembly. So as Jane mentioned, we provided 3 preliminary options for what could potentially be reinstalled in lieu of that existing precast banding. Of those three options, one of the first ones was to remove and replace with new precast banding. One of the issues, and I think we discussed that during the evaluation, is we think there's a chemical that was used in some of the precast that was found on this facility. Generally should not be in there and can result in some chemical reactions that we think is contributing to what's happening at this facility itself. And new precast would mitigate that from potentially happening again. Another option was replacing the existing precast with new brick masonry. The intent would be to either utilize a similar brick to what's there or potentially an alternative brick to kind of maintain that aesthetic impact of having some sort of alternative banding component at those locations. And then the third option was to go back with a granite banding, which was, I believe, the original design intent based on the architect's original drawings, in lieu of the precast that actually found its way on there. So of those three options, the removal and replacement with new precast banding was approximately, we'll round up, 2.6 million, and that includes all the associated through-wall flashings, repairs of the brick masonry, as well as that banding replacement. Same scope of work, but with the brick masonry replacement instead of the precast was about 2.3 million, and then alternatively, the granite banding was at about 2.9. So understanding that there might be some potential budget constraints associated with this, as I mentioned, this existing precast banding is posing a potential fall hazard. We have looked at a potential of utilizing what's called debris containment netting. It is a netting type material. There's several variations that could be utilized. But the product that we've used at other higher education facilities with success to date would involve 2 layers of scrim, one to maintain smaller debris, the other one to kind of maintain larger debris. That gets installed over your existing displaced precast banding, and the intent of that is to try to mitigate any debris that might fall off while also kind of holding it in place. One thing I do want to point out that this type of debris containment netting is not meant to be a permanent solution. It is there to mitigate the potential of fall hazards from actually occurring or potentially falling on somebody who is standing near, but may not deter it 100%, correct? So if a piece falls off, it isn't observed, that adds undue stress to that netting, which eventually could result in the failure of that debris containment netting. So it also becomes a long-term maintenance item that you have to make sure you keep regular tabs on and evaluate to make sure there isn't any excess stress within the material. With that, we've looked at some very preliminary cost estimates associated with doing that. So this preliminary or temporary measure would be about $473,000 in order to install that netting around all of the existing precast banding on the facility. And again, this number might vary, but as of right now, and that number would vary based on the type of mechanical attachment that's required, given the substrate and given the number of whites or layers of brick that are on some locations of this facade.
What's the length of time that this netting would be good for?
It depends. I've seen it installed at some locations for upwards of 3 years prior to more large-scale repairs and renovation work being done. In those particular instances, we were actually engaged to do quarterly evaluations of that netting as part of a maintenance program that facility wanted to utilize, so they engaged us for that. Again, as I mentioned, it could depend on whether or not you have displacement. If you don't end up having displacement and there is an undue stress on it, it may end up lasting longer than what that 3-year period might be, but it is circumstantial.
Do you have an estimated cost for those quarterly check-ins?
I don't have that prepared.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's not included in the $473,000 to install it?
No. Yes, yes, to be clear, that 473,000 is estimated construction cost.
I can't see that button. So considering the problem that we have now with the precast, why would we even consider it again?
So it wasn't something that we were necessarily pushing for, which is why we provided the 3 options. It was just something that we wanted to provide as an alternative. As I mentioned, the particular chemical or material that we believe is resulting in these reactions is not something that in our specifications and or design that we would put for new precast concrete. Is something we would want to have seen within that precast concrete blend. And typically during construction, we would have performed site visits during the batching process to try to mitigate that from resulting again within that new precast material.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry. So, I'm sorry, I can't see the light here, so. So, I'm just gonna say, what if? If we were to decide to go with that precast again, is there a guarantee that it will stay on the building and whatever is interacting negatively will be completely gone? Do you remove that, or do we just hope for the best? And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I shouldn't have said that way. But are we just going to hope for the best? Do we know that we can remove whatever the chemical is that's causing a problem?
So,
Not we, you.
yes. So to be clear, the chemical that actually happened or found its way is, just trying not to get too technical, but it's actually within the aggregate that was used within the concrete. Aggregate is concrete is comprised of several different things, including cement, aggregate, water, sand, so on and so forth. Some additional additives. In this particular instance, we find that this material or this chemical is usually a result of the type of aggregate that was used within the concrete. This isn't something that's inherent within the building. This isn't something that's off-gassing or anything like this or that. So specifying a type of aggregate that does not include this type of material and or chemical would mitigate the potential of this same type of deterioration or displacement from presenting again in the future.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
The one thing to add, the last time when Gail presented at our second to last facilities committee, the committee along with the administration was going to recommend replacing with granite, because the original drawings called for granite, and then somewhere along the way, I'm assuming as a cost-saving measure, the precast concrete was subbed in, and here we are. So it was going to be the recommendation of the facilities committee to bring to the full board to say, we have to do this, it's critical repair, let's do it right this time, so we potentially don't have these issues down the road. Thanks, I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
I was already there.
Do you have an expected lifespan on each option? I would expect granite would be expected to last pretty much forever, but for the brick and the concrete?
From a material standpoint itself, yes, granite has potentially a longer service life than what the granite and or brick masonry would. They all have their maintenance needs long-term. Brick masonry, like any other brick, eventually would require maintenance to mortar joints and things of that nature, very similar to some of the deterioration we're seeing elsewhere on the facade. So yeah, like with anything else, they have their pros and cons, but long-term, I think granite would have a longer service life than the other 3 options with a decreased maintenance requirement over the lifespan.
So I know here you guys wrote that you guys are at 75% design. The next step is 100%. But obviously you need our go-ahead, and obviously we're facing some budget constraints. So what is the timeline that we are looking at? So actually, to be clear, we are at 100% design at this point. I believe, as Jason mentioned, it was that 75% review meeting that we had in which it was directed to move forward with the granite at that time, with those documents to be brought forth in front of the rest of the board.
Alan, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alan. So we'll bring the Gale proposal back in April. Because we're going to have to do something to address the brick.
So Alan, what's our deadline? If we wanted to get this done by this summer, where are we at from a drop dead date to commit?
That's going to be a very difficult question to answer. There are several things that can factor into that. Lead time is going to be one of them. I believe the lead time, the last time we checked on the granite, I think was maybe 8 to 12 weeks, I think somewhere within that time frame. But that, of course, is going to be dependent as to whether or not the materials are readily available right now, whether or not they're now on back order, or where that may ultimately end up being. Sorry, it may have been 6 to 8 weeks last time we spoke. As far as contractor availability, it's my understanding that a lot of masons are already getting booked up, and a lot of contractors are already starting to book out into 2025. And to be clear, that would be 2025 or summer construction season, specifically related to only doing work during summer break for school districts.
What about the netting option?
The netting option, again, would be a little bit less of a lead time, actually quite a bit less of a lead time. Generally, that becomes, they do kind of manufacture that in roll specific. So they would probably do like a 3-foot wide to go over the netting based upon whatever that design ends up being. I think at that point you'd be more relying on contractor availability to get that into that window.
Does that netting prevent us from doing any roof work or anything up on top of the building?
So that netting would be specific to mitigating the potential fall hazards that the existing precast banding is posing. That would not impact any water management within the veneer wall. That would not impact anything to do associated with the roof, and would not diminish any additional deterioration that would result from current deficiencies you're currently presented with in the facade.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
All right, so we're at delegation individuals. Just one thing I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. We will open discussion for the public during the budget discussion as well, after Austin goes through what everyone has in their hands right now in more detail. So if you have more questions, we will allow people to come up during that time as well. So if you have budget-specific questions, I would say wait till then. Any other questions you have, you can come up now, give your name and address, and get you 3 minutes.
Well, hello all. You're only going to have to listen to me for a few minutes tonight, so some of you are going to be happy about that. Some of you hopefully sad, I don't know. I wanted to also welcome the new members and take the opportunity to kind of address what has happened with the failure of these warrant articles. Yep.
Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kearney Picorni and 294.5 Hampstead Road. So I want to take the opportunity to address the failure of the warrant articles, and take a moment with Kim and Austin and Joe and Jan and Clifton, and this was not a failure of your plan. This was not a failure of your ideas and your passion for what you hope this school district will become. This was a failure of our ability to communicate that plan to this community, and I apologize for that. What I also want to say is I'm someone that really holds in any big project that failure is necessary and it brings opportunity. And I hope that this board does not simply shut down and say, well, I'm going to pass it on to somebody else and continue the years of complacency and nothing getting achieved. I hope that you respond with saying, okay, well, we're going to reevaluate. We're going to look at new ideas. We're going to double down on talking to this community, on figuring out what we need to do to get this district that we need. And that means being creative and leading with that creative, what can we become attitude. And I hope that that doesn't get lost in the defeat of what all of the work that we did this last year, because I know that that for me felt defeating, and I was frustrated and I was angry and I felt disrespected, and I know that that is not where this community was coming from. I think this community simply just wanted to have more information and more say in the process. And I think that we do deserve a community that can come together and not be scared of communicating with each other, of giving each other the numbers. This is what we're in. This is what the State House is sending us, and that's why that's messed up. But we need to work together anyways, as messed up as the system is. The only way we're going to get to what I really believe the 5, 6, 7, 8 model and the future of our education can be, and it takes more than 1 year. So we have the opportunity to say, okay, here we go again, and let's try again. Let's bring I know Austin, a gentleman reached out to me about solar panels that he talked to the facility committee, Jan and David, about. I feel like that is where we have to go these next few years, is what ways can we invest in doing this cheaper? Because the tax burden, it's no joke, guys. It isn't. It's because at this point, the taxes just keep going up and we have no results to show for it. So now we're kicking people out. I see my red button. I'm almost done. You don't have to extend my time. My point being, we have to do something. Simply saying, I'm good, I don't like change, and we're going to let the buildings just fall apart around us is not an option. So let's figure out where to go from here. That's all.
Thanks, Kearney.
Thank you, Erica Leon, 84 Schneider Road, and that was a great lead-in because I'm actually speaking in my role as one of the 10 state representatives for Derry. I substituted on the Finance Committee all last week, and I was there for a hearing on the update to the adequacy in school funding today. So I wanted to bring an update from where things are in Concord and to ask for input from the board and anybody in the community as we move forward to try and make sure that funding is appropriate. So there is a school funding bill that's already passed the House once. It's increased the base adequacy, which is what you get for every student, from the House bill number is House Bill 1583. So it would increase the base adequacy from $4,100 to $4,400 per student. That passed. It also would add 2 new factors: relief funding that would get the town of Derry another $404,000, and fiscal capacity disparity aid, which would get the town another $2.6 million. The amendment that was heard today is one that brings us up to the level that was recommended by the judge. That would increase the per pupil to $7,356.01 per student, and it would keep the same relief funding, fiscal capacity disparity aid. So that would actually bring us up from a total state amount from Derry from $31.5 million to $43.7 million. And that includes the SWEPT amount. So that also addresses the lawsuit around SWEPT, which is the statewide education property tax. In order to do all of this, it would go to 68% of the base adequacy grant would be assessed around the whole state because it's state funded, and that is the only full state funded amount. So that would increase. We would be collecting, instead of $6.4 million from Derry and SWEPT, we'd be collecting $13.5. But all of that would stay in our community. Under this model, $88 million from 53 different communities would be sent back to the state to pay for the increase in our funding and other towns as well. There is also a provision, now that this is linking everybody in order to have some accountability to everybody else and to be sure that budgets in one town aren't in a big arms race to spend the most money. This would require that school budgets, if it passes on a 50% vote, could only go up by the 3-year average cost of living increase. To have a higher increase outside of facilities and building and all of those other more lumpy payments would require a 2/3 vote. So I would appreciate if you could look at House Bill 1583 and specifically Amendment 1005H in order to see if you think that that's something that we should do in order to increase the funding for Derry from 31.5 million to 43.7 million, or if there is another path. I'm not sure if the people representing those 53 communities are going to go along with this, but I would like to know the opinion of the community. And I've been working closely with finance, so I may be able to take some input back. So I can be reached by email, cell phone, or text. I'll be in a lot of meetings, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can because this is a pressing matter. It needs to come out of finance next week so it can be voted on April 11th. So thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Okay.
Danielle Cunha, 124 East Broadway. I first wanted to just ask the board if you were going to answer questions tonight, if we have specific questions, or is this something we're going to have to wait for an answer on?
She asked if when the sheets that we passed out tonight, will you answer specific questions on those if they have?
It's not on the sheet specifically. Does it need to be something from the sheet?
Half the delegates and individuals, so we don't get into a back and forth.
So no? Figures. Okay. I just want to ask a question in relation to the Derry Education Association post that was made the day of the election or very late the evening before, and if the board has a response to it. I'm just curious if that information posted in that, and I can share it with you if you haven't seen it, if that information is accurate, and why wasn't the teachers communicated with, and it's something I said about a year ago as well, so I'm curious. Thank you.
Evening, Meg Morrisberry, President of the Derry Education Association. There are several things I'd like to talk about tonight. First, I need some clarification. In the last 2 weeks, have you guys had a meeting as the school board met? Because when I look at all these Facebook posts, it looks like decisions were made, and I don't remember seeing a meeting posted. So I'd like to know if there was a meeting that happened and you made decisions prior to today. So I would really like an answer to that question. And then, and you don't have to do it now if you want to do it later, but I really need someone to explain the default budget to me. It seems like if we worked with one budget this year, we funded 7 schools, we had X amount of employees, we'd have X amount of students. Your default budget includes the increases in contractual obligations, busing, teacher salaries, electricity, water, the increase on insurance that, like I'd like to point out, is not a teacher's insurance, it's the district insurance where employees pay from anywhere from nothing to 20%, depending on your pay grade. So I'm not quite sure how, I'm not getting how a budget that had 7 schools in it last year that's automatically going to increase by contractual obligations is not supporting 7 schools next year. I don't have an answer to that one. And I do appreciate the fact that you said that you would address people after each section, because that's each topic, because I think that's important to be for the transparency piece. And I would like to know when I can get an answer to those questions. So, because I think it's important. I don't have the answers and I don't know where to find them.
Separate. You can start the timer over, please. Thank you. Members of the Derry School Board, my name is Dave Levesque. I'm the first vice president of the Derry Education Association. As you gather today to discuss the pressing matters regarding 24-25 and the district's default budget, it's imperative that you approach this conversation with transparency and determination. Our school district faces significant challenges ahead, and it's crucial that they are addressed collectively with the understanding that each stakeholder, whether it be teachers, the Derry Education Association, parents, community members, We all play a vital role in finding solutions. Dismissing any of these key stakeholders would be a disservice to our collective goal of ensuring the best possible education of our students. Before any votes are cast on which plan is better or which path is best to move forward, be sure to paint a clear picture for all of us to be able to see. Be sure to list the pros and cons and not be afraid to state reasons why. The Derry Education Association is committed to support and teach all students who enter our classrooms. We do the best that we possibly can so that we're the best teachers for our students. We need your support, we need the support of the community, and we also need a voice. And since November 16th, we have not had that voice. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gertie Flagg. I work at Grinnell. And just bear with me. This is not my favorite situation to be in. So this is my first year working at Grinnell. It's not my first year as a teacher, but it's my first year in this district. And I've had an amazing year working with incredible teachers and administrators, and I've been lucky enough to work with Kim. And I've made connections with my coworkers and my students, and it's been incredible. When I was hired, the message I was given was that there was a possibility of changes in the district, but it was really portrayed to me that no matter what happened, I would still have a place in the district. It just might not be at Grinnell. And that message has been flip-flopped all year long. And so it's just been hard for us to kind of give a message to our students. We've spent this whole year trying to get our 4th and 5th graders adjusted to moving to a new school. That's what we've been telling them. We've had so many talks about it. And now it just kind of feels like that's up in the air. And that's a very difficult thing for our kids and our staff, and it is causing some stress that is going on to our students, and it has not been easy. So I understand that this is not an easy decision. I totally get it. I would not want to be in that position to make that call, but here we are, and a decision has to be made. So in the interest of the young minds that will be our future, I urge you to really think about this and make the best decision for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jenna Paradise, 1 Hubbard Hill Road. I just wanted to address something that came up during and right after elections is that people were saying one of the things is that not enough information had gone out. And I know that we had what was considered record turnout, well, second largest record turnout, but a lot of people didn't feel like they were being reached. I talked to a lot of people afterwards that obviously didn't even know about election. And I think one of the things that we're missing, should this come to a vote next time, the new school or the capital improvements, is new and younger families. A lot of people, I don't know if you remember, the baby in the infant stage, when you're just treading water, you're probably not paying attention to what's happening in the upcoming school district. A lot of people don't get the Derry news, and unless you tune in specifically to the right pages, you don't know where the information is. I know he sent out the postcards. I know that there were Facebook posts. Not everybody's on Facebook posts. So one of the things that I think would be really beneficial, and I know that the school board probably can't necessarily do it on their own, but it probably goes to the superintendent, is to go to the preschools and to go to maybe the local daycares, to have packets, to have flyers of information so that you are getting the new families involved before they get in, they even put their foot in the door. Because I think one of the things is that we're trying to ask people to invest money into something that isn't going to directly benefit them. And I know we want to be part of that public community, and that's very important. But a lot of times when you've got one foot out the door, to sink that, millions into something that you don't look like it's going to benefit you, it's very frustrating. But if you would hit up the families and presented to them, they say the Barca and the South Range families that might go there, and you had presented to them the idea of, do you want to fix these old schools or do you want a new school? They could have very well said, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. Most of them weren't even in the know. So I think that approaching preschools or daycares or library, even going to the library when they have the nursery rhyme thing, something like that, to have that information there and get them involved really early before they walk in the door. So that's just something that I thought of and I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members, administrators, Madam Secretary. First of all, I just want to thank the entire board and administrators for all the work they've done the last year or so, working on reorganization and fixing the current buildings. But I think it's important. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive. But I think it's important that you continue on with your reorganization of the schools. School boards have been talking about it for several years, and the CAM was just kicked down the road, and finally you guys addressed the issue, and I give you a lot of credit for that. That's not an easy task to do, so I just wanted to thank you for that, and I think you need to continue with that. But also, there's a lot of money that you need to put into the schools, and one of the suggestions that I would have, and it's just, I'm picking out an arbitrary figure, but I would say, $15 million for the first year or two to fix a couple of the schools. And then, when that's done, a couple of years down the road, another $15 or $20 million, whatever it is. I think the $36 million was a lot for everybody to swallow. That obviously on top of the new school. But anyway, I know you guys have your work cut out for you, and I wish you a lot of luck, and congratulations, new members.
Thanks, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Erin Spencer, 57 Stonegate Lane. Never sat on this side before. I just wanted to say hello, say congratulations to your new members, and congratulations to those taking on leadership. I'm the chair for the town council this year, as well as the school board liaison. So please feel free to reach out to me with anything that you need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Brown, 6 Wood Road, Derry. Couple things, because I guess I only have 3 minutes. I'm one of the reasons why all these articles failed, because I've lived in town for 66 and a half years. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people that maybe you don't. The key thing that I want to stress to the board tonight is, well, obviously, number one is money. I make $19,600 a year, and I pay $6,300 in taxes. And so I'm sorry, I can't afford a new school at this moment in time. I'm not alone. There are a lot of other people in town that voted against this, not because we don't like the kids. I taught school for 28 years. Math, and I started in Derry my first 4 years. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it can't be stressed enough that one of the things that this town is lacking is communication between the school board, the town council, and Pinkerton Academy. Pinkerton Academy, I feel, is the elephant in the room, because a lot of new people that move to this town don't realize that they're getting 2 school districts, not 1. You're getting a 1 through 8 school district, and then you're getting a 9 through 12 different entity. And you need to be able to communicate with each other. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, Pinkerton's putting up a $19 million building right now. The Derry Fire Department is going up at $19 million, a new fire station, okay? And then you come along and you think you're gonna get $78 million school? Hello, I don't think so. So one of the big things is, it used to be years ago, you had to coordinate, you didn't vote for something to build something until the bond got paid off someplace else. That's what we did with the hood additions. That's what Pinkerton did with their buildings, I think. So you don't have much of a choice. You've got to reach out and you've got to talk to the other entities here in town. Because those of us on the front lines that are working like hell just to make ends meet and to pay our taxes, it ain't flying anymore. And I'm sorry, God help you if I wind up on the school board.
The one thing I would say is, this past year, starting of last year, the legislative committee has been convened on a more regular basis, where 3 town councilors, 3 school board members, and 3 state reps and a state senator meet pretty regularly to discuss the issues of the day of what's going on.
Do you
So,
meet
know,
with representatives from Pinkerton?
we do not. They chose not to show up.
They chose not to show, which doesn't surprise me if you read the Pinkerton Academy contract that we have with with them.
We're doing back and forth here. I'm just saying. We're not answering other questions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lily Simmons. I live at 5 Oxbow Lane in Derry. I think that what the gentleman just addressed was kind of what was on my mind when I was voting, was this question of affordability, right? What can we afford? And we all make those decisions every day, right? You know, what can I buy for groceries? You know, those are really, really common family decisions that we have to make. And, you know, I was thinking, you know, you wake up sometimes and maybe you have a toothache, right? And you got to go to the dentist, because if you don't go to the dentist now, you know, you might be looking at a root canal later on. And that was sort of my thinking when I was really disappointed that we didn't come through with what the school board asked for. You know, you guys are the professionals, you're the experts, you paid for the studies, you did all of your homework. And I personally was really disappointed, because I think we are just delaying that toothache down the road. So, you know, nobody likes to pay more taxes, but I think ultimately we're asking the kids to pay the price here. And as a resident of Derry, as a parent of a 3rd grader, and a soon-to-be kindergartner, it bums me out. It really does. I think that Jenna said really eloquently that it was sort of a mismatch of just this sort of negative campaign about how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to cost. And it's going to cost something right now. I'm more concerned with what it's going to cost years down the road. So my hope is that your project, your goal of improving the education here in Derry, it's noble, and I really want to see it succeed. So, you know, I think we shouldn't ignore the toothache, and I really hope that the next time we get a chance to vote, we vote the way the experts have done their homework on tell us to. So, thank you.
I don't care either way. I'm patient. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Nora Richards. I live on 7 Fox Hollow Road. So I was really disappointed that the vote went the way it went, in all honesty. I work for the Greater Derry Extended Day Program. I have been in all of these schools for many, many years. I can see a lot of what needs to be done, and I can see how hard it is to get it done. I mean, in all honesty, I am very impressed with how well you've done holding those schools together. But at this point, it's getting to be like duct tape and bubble gum and like, let's cross our fingers and hope, because there's a lot in the way of fixing some of the things in these schools. And I will tell you, it is really disappointing for the kids when there's water in the gym and they can't go in the gym and play in the gym. You know, it is a hard thing. And yeah, I know the cost is really high for a new school. And I know a lot of people that is going to really hurt, because they are really just penny to penny, you know, every month, paycheck to paycheck. It is hard, and I get that. In all honesty, if we had done this, you know, many years ago, it would not cost as much as it costs today, and inflation is a thing, and it is going to continue going up. I will be honest, my kids are at Derry Village, and it was difficult having that conversation with them, because I was pregnant with them when I was there working, and they've been in that school since they were babies, walking around. It was a tough conversation, but we had the conversation. They understand what's going on and why it's going on. You know, it is what it is, and it is what it needs to be. So it is unfortunate that we aren't getting the funding right now, that everything didn't pass, but I really hope that you continue pushing forward with what needs to happen, because those buildings, they're hurt, and it's very hard to keep them going. And it's hard for the kids to live with the buildings, the state that they're in. So I want to thank you all for all of the hard work that you've done, and hopefully there's a way to find a path that won't hurt everyone's paychecks to a terrible point, but will also give the schools and the children what they need, because there's a lot that needs to be done for the schools that need it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Derek Anderson, Stark Road. So I'm probably not going to say anything new that you folks haven't already figured out since March 12th. That I think the two biggest reasons why nothing passed was fear of taxes and information. And the tax situation is difficult because really the impact in this town was decided generations before most of us were even in this town or born. The town was created as a bedroom community. They didn't want a lot of commercial development. If we look at our tax rate, and specifically the school portion of the tax rate, it's less than most of the sending towns. I think Auburn is the only one that we're higher than. And of course, theirs is probably going to skyrocket next year. The ones that are lower than us around here are Londonderry, Salem, Hooksett, Hudson. They all have massive commercial areas. So this town chose to go this route many, many years ago. So it is not the town council's fault. It's not the school board's fault. You can't blame these boards for the taxes that we see now. We have to take care of our schools. We have to build new schools once in a while. And that's just something that's a fact of life, and that we just have to do that. The information piece, it certainly wasn't because you guys didn't try. I think every contractor that came forward, every engineer we hired, every architect that was brought in, all said, because of your maintenance staff, your buildings are where they are now, and they haven't fallen down yet. The reason why we have such bad buildings is because the initial building materials or the quality of workmanship were to blame for this. So again, to blame the school board or members here or in the past isn't the right thing to do. What we all need to do now is come together as a community. Maybe we have to make this plan a little simpler, but we all need to move forward together, understand the tax reality. It's not going to change. We're not going to suddenly get another wing of Derry and put up a bunch of commercial stuff to offset the taxes. But hearing from our state rep, I would definitely encourage us to move forward with that bill. There's been a massive amount of resistance to having donor towns in the past, but if that sentiment has changed in Concord, then I would be fully willing to go behind that effort. And I think if you don't do anything else, I would say move forward with the 5, 6, 7, 8 plan, because I've talked to quite a few teachers and even more parents that are all excited about that plan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Derek.
Good evening. My name is Jane Cuthbert, 12 Elwood Road in Derry, since a few years ago, 1978. Moved into the community because we were living in Wyndham at the time, and next door was 2 teachers and said, you're going to have little ones. Derry has a great school district. So we moved here. And through the years, with many different capacities involved in the school, always at Derry Village, from PTA, now the extended day since 1987, I've seen this community and what it can do. I would like to thank everyone who did. I, for one, voted for the new school. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and we are on a limited budget, but I went to deliberative session after deliberative session when my kids were little, and I promised myself then that when I got to be this age, I would still support what Derry kids need. So for that reason, my husband and I both voted on the new school and said we would work around the taxes somehow. I understand maybe not everybody can do that. Fortunately, we can. But what I would like to point out is a couple of things. We have, like the teacher said a little while ago, we have been working with our 4th and 5th graders. We've been doing projects with them, getting them together, because we're in 4 of the 5 different elementary schools. So we're getting them together, getting them ready to go to the school. I would strongly suggest you stay with that plan. I am a firm believer. I never liked the fact that the 6th graders went to middle school back years ago. And you guys probably know when that was. I don't remember dates. I wasn't a fan of it then. Our kids grow up way too fast. And with social media and telephones and whatnot, it's even faster. So I implore you to help keep them a little bit younger, a little bit longer. And by keeping them with their peers, that will do that. Also, you're going to be getting those kids together. And from 5th grade on, they're going to have the bonds of their friendships. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, right through Pinkerton. I think that's really important because I can remember the angst that my kids had when they were leaving 6th grade to go over to Hood. And yes, these kids will go to a new building. They'll be in one building, then another building. But they will do it as a unit, and they will do it together. And I think if you stay with that plan, you're building lifetime friendships and commitments to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. Good evening, Richard Tripp, 46 Wyndham Road. Congratulations, Wilbur. Congratulations, Katie. You know, I hope you enjoy your 3 years. Or maybe you're 27 years like Brenda.
27.
It's not 27? Well, I'm not going to talk about the election. I think other people have talked well about it. At the last school board meeting, there was a bunch of policies that I guess are in the revision state. And one caught my eye. I thought it was quite interesting. That it was a new KI policy, which deals with visitors to schools. And one of the requirements is that anyone who's not a regular staff member or student of the school will be termed a visitor. And I looked through the rest of the policies, and if you weren't a member of the administrative staff or a teacher, there doesn't seem to be any mention of them. So my question is, what's a staff member? Because you've got custodians, you got paraprofessionals, you got food workers, you got office staff, you got the lady who was doing after-school program stuff. You know, it doesn't seem that they're regular staff members. So
it'd be one of those things where, would they have to sign in since they don't meet the policy? Or is it just something that everyone knows that's the way it is? Because another one of the things is that you have to ask to visit the school 24 hours in advance. You know, that seems like if they're not regular staff members, having everybody sign up 24 hours in advance, unless everybody knows that they actually are real staff members, is a little hard, because I might identify as a regular staff member and I wouldn't have to sign in, right? Thank you.
Hello. Hi. My name's Jen Thoreau. I live at 33 Village Brook Lane. I have 2 young daughters at East Derry Memorial Elementary School and a son up and coming at Nutfield Preschool right now. I just wanted to say that I was deeply disappointed in the town's vote a couple weeks ago. I think we have some very difficult decisions to make as a community now, as a school board. I think that difficult decisions are often not popular decisions to make, and I know you're all in a difficult position because of that. I would like to say I was part of, for a very short period, the work group that was designed for the 5, 6, 7, 8 model transition. I will say that I was very excited about that idea. I continue to be excited about that idea. I think the school board should continue with that idea. I think it's a good one. And contrary to popular belief, I think it is well thought out. I did work for a short period of time at Pinkerton Academy, and I did see the impact of having students go to Hood and then students come from West Running Brook, kind of having separate identities. And I think that having a collective identity starting in 5th grade, 6th grade in one school, and then moving on in 7th and 8th grade in another school is a great model to go off of. As part of the work group, we talked about how other communities have had a lot of success in the area with that model. I think that's all I have to say. I will say that I know that these are difficult decisions to make. I'm not really happy looking at either one of these models, to be honest, of restructuring versus not restructuring. There's going to be cuts. It's going to be difficult. But I think the kids need to be thought of first. And I think a lot of that needs to be considered by the school board. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Kling for Village Brook Lane. I'm going to probably echo some comments that I heard from Mr. Brown and maybe even Derek. I think there's 3 reasons basically why everything failed. I think the first one is financial. I think if you look at 2022, the cost of inflation to the average household was $5,200. The following year was another $3,500, and that doesn't even include the property taxes. And then these 3 articles in total were $3 per thousand, which for most people is $1,200 to $1,500 a year, and they said they can't afford it. The second one I think is just spending fatigue. The town put forward a fire station for $9 million without bringing it to the voters. You've got Pinkerton that put together a social studies building for $21 million that was forecasted to be $10 to $12 million, and then in less than a year it was $21 million. You know, again, taxpayers didn't have a say on it. And now you propose a new school, and I think people said they just can't afford it. And the third thing is messaging. I'm not sure you articulated well enough why you needed a new school this instant. Why couldn't it have waited for a couple of years after the redistricting got done? On the maintenance, why did you have to do all 3 phases? Why couldn't you have just gone for 1 phase? And then on the SAU positions, I'm not sure that the new SAU positions were adequately explained. A lot of teachers have come up to me and said that they think there's too many in the SAU, and here they are adding a new one, so there seems to be a disconnect between the teachers and the school administration. I think that needs to be addressed if you're going to go down that path. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm going to read an email that I received today that he asked to read during public discussion. It's from Jeff Moulton, 5 Taylor Brook Lane in Derry. I'm a civil engineer with the professional engineer's license in structural and general construction engineering for the last 40 years in New Hampshire, and also have an MBA. I'm the chair of the Derry Net Zero Task Force, where we have implemented a number of energy-saving projects as well as solar projects that currently save the town over $1 million a year in electricity and fuel costs. We have reviewed the consultant reports for the 7 schools, as well made visits to each school to look at conditions of the buildings and check for feasibility of adding solar panels on the roof or nearby land. Neither alternatives was feasible due to either poor conditions of the structures, or in some cases the schools were designed too old to code that did not support the current roof loads. In particular, Derry Village and South Range schools appeared to be severely compromised structurally and would take a large investment just to restore them to previous state, $30 to $40 million each. I've also been involved with the restoration of older and sometimes poorly constructed buildings, and it is almost always the case there are more problems discovered during construction that can be seen until walls and roofs were removed. So before I give you my recommendation, one caveat/bias. My mother, wife, and brother were teachers, and I've seen firsthand the difference a dedicated teacher can make on a child's life. My recommendation is not to waste money on South Range and Derry Village. They are money pits. Number 1, sell the properties. Number 2, use the operational savings to repair the remaining 5 schools. Number 3, use the sale of the properties to fund immediate large needs for infrastructure repairs. Number 4, pay teachers what they're worth. And number 5, keep some of the land for a solar park. The solar park, similarly to what the town is doing at the landfill, will provide power for all the schools, provide substantial savings in energy costs, and if a purchase/lease option is used, no money would be needed to fund the project, as the vendor would build and operate the facilities and then sell the power back to the schools at a discounted rate. We would be glad to model the system needed and produce an associated business case once the board has decided on a facility plan. Thank you. That being said, we'll move to Davis Demographics Report. My apologies. We had taken this off the agenda, and we did distribute to the board members on February 21st. The goal was to bring Davis, fly in for this meeting, but we knew the meeting was going to be longer than expected, so we asked him to reschedule at a different time at a later date, so we'll pass that along once we have the information. My apologies for that. Yeah, the report, for anyone that wants to review it, is on the website to consume and ask questions as needed. All right, so next on the agenda, we have the school elections. I'll quickly run through them. I think many in the room are pretty up to date on what happened, but I'll go through it quickly. So school board at large, there was 2 open seats, one by Katie DeLay and Wilbert Danger. School district moderator, we had write-in candidates, Roger Constant and Erica Leone. Roger Constant won that seat. Article 2 was for the capital improvements bond that's been discussed. At that point, it did receive a majority, but did not reach the 60% threshold. Article 3 was the new school. That motion failed. Article 4, the operating budget. That motion failed as well. Article 5 was the collective bargaining agreement between the AFSCME union. That motion passed, excuse me. And
number 6 passed as well, which would have gave us authorization to convene a special meeting if that did not pass. And number 7 was the petition warrant article that passed. So I guess, you know, what we're here now is to talk about what we do next, right? The budget discussion. So the way I see it, and I'll look for input from my fellow board members, we have a couple decisions to make. The first one is whether we, you know, continue on the path of restructuring and closure, or we look at going back to the 7-school model and figure out the budgetary items that go along with that. My hope and expectation tonight is we get a resolution on that first question, so we can give people somewhat of comfort and to know what to expect moving forward. On the budget discussion, I think we'll have a pretty good discussion on that. We'll have Austin run through the data that you all have in your hands right now. But I wouldn't expect a finalized budget tonight. We'll push for a special meeting of the board, and hopefully we can get some of the fiscal advisory members to join us at that meeting. And obviously it'd be a meeting like this, it'd be in public, it would be on TV, online, and then we would, at that point in time, you know, finalize the budget, which my expectation, hopefully everyone agrees, would be somewhere in the ballpark of next Tuesday, or somewhere in that date, and within a week. But that's up for discussion for everybody on the board we'll go through as we go through this next discussion period. So what I would do right now is I would open up to the board to discuss thoughts, questions, or just general commentary on what do we do next. And so I'll open it up and anyone jump in.
I was just asking a question. I thought we were going to have the superintendent go through these first before we had a discussion.
We can do that. Austin, do you want to go through your list first? Thank you.
Thought process behind that is we have two situations. I was under the impression you folks were going to vote on whether or not, no matter what, school district budget didn't pass. So we've got to come up with almost $1 million. But it's a very, to me, an easier situation to negate one of these two if we vote and, or a decision is made. Right now, the vote was restructuring how many months ago? If a vote comes up about what we're going to do now, the thought process was a decision will be made by the school board. We're either continuing on with the restructuring or we're going to go back to the existing structure for the time being. And then we can look at potential budget cuts for that. If you want me to go over both, I can do that. Okay?
Well, whatever I just didn't know what the process. Sorry, Richard. I just didn't know what the process was going to be. I just kind of wanted to clarify it. That's all.
No problem. So what I opened up my statement was I thought we would talk about what to move forward with, whether to stick with the current restructuring closure or look at going back to a 7-school model and move forward from there. So that's where I wanted to open up the discussion.
I understand that, but not having been fully in the facilities committee and discussions, I think it's important to know where we're going with the budget before we can make a decision about what we're going to do. And I have other questions about, you know, what can we do? Can we have a special meeting? What is involved in that? How, you know, all those other steps. So I just want to, like, I kind of want it to be smooth to be able to understand, but I don't know what that best process is.
So what I would say is this didn't get populated from the facilities committee. This came from Austin and presented to everybody. So what I would say is I'm up for anything that the board wants to discuss and bring up. We can go in any order you would like. I recommended a process. If we want to do something different, that's totally fine.
I want to remind the board that Gordon is here, one of our school district lawyers, for the purpose for the purpose, so I didn't know if you maybe wanted him to come up here in case there's specific questions that you may have. When you mention, for instance, a special meeting, that is exactly why someone like Gordon is here, because he knows the ins and outs of the laws much better than anybody else. And if you have some questions about that, then by all means, it would be good to get him to the mic so you could ask those questions.
Austin, I think what Brenda's saying makes sense, to just kind of run through high level both options, and then we can have discussion based around those options. So we're not just kind of going back and forth on things.
Understood. So
Thanks.
bear with me, because you're going to hear a lot of repetition. As you can see from this document, there's a lot of potential budget cuts that are, it doesn't matter if we stick with restructuring or if we go back to existing, they're going to be the same cuts. There are some additions and some cuts. There was a question earlier on about the default budget. You got to remember that the school board voted long before the budgeting process to restructure, close the school, et cetera. So when we did the budget was done with restructuring in mind, the closing of a school, et cetera, because that decision was made well over a year ago. So when we think of this budget and this default budget, it is based on a model of restructuring without Derry Village and 5, 6, 7, 8 K4 elementary schools. So as much as I love 30 fonts, I got about a 2 font here, so you're going to have to bear with my glasses here. So since we are currently still in the restructuring, I'm going to start with the restructuring process. Up at the very top in like a 2 font, it says scenario restructuring. And yeah, I'll just go with this. It's just as easy. Thank you. So delay the renewal of teacher computers. Cliff would prefer to replace computers every 4 years. As it says here, the computers after September, they no longer can get those upgrades. You know, if you have an older computer at home, you keep getting these upgrades, and it tells you to upgrade your computer. You try to do it, you can't do it. Is that pretty much in line with what you're talking about? Now, that being said, we have done this before in the past, and we have an excellent technology department, and the administration suggests we move forward with this. Eliminate email filter. We've never had one. We get phishing emails. An email filter's never going to get rid of all of our phishing emails. It is just something that Cliff has found out about recently, or it just came on the market. This is something that we could wait another year for. We suggest we move that forward. We have a network administrator who is planning on retiring halfway through next year, and Cliff believes that his staff can pick up those duties when she retires, so we believe in moving that $40,000 forward. We have 6 tech leader stipends. The tech leaders are in the school. They sometimes are assistants. They sometimes are teachers. They could really be anybody within the school that has that interest. And the thought process here is, once again, the tech department can pick up the necessary duties of that position. So we suggest that moves forward. Joe, the assistant superintendent, having been very well acquainted with Next Charter School, This is based on an updated enrollment projection, and again, we suggest that we move forward with this reduction as well. Eliminate the music program at Deep. This is something that the coordinator, Janine Metro, put forward. This program is supplemental. They've had some issues with it. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes they struggle with it. But we still believe that music for the Deep program is something that we could move forward. We don't suggest removing that $4,000. Now, when we look at, first of all, the next one, the AEPSI system at Deep, to us, this is a no-brainer. The state is rolling out a new program that is free. So, and please understand, when you look at 2,000 and 1,000 and 4,000, we believe you put a bean in the cup, then after a while you get a bunch of beans in the cup, and it adds up to more than just a hill of beans. So that's why you see some of these smaller items here. So we suggest that moves forward, and Janine Metro agrees with that 100%, as well as the tech department. Now, when you see things like reducing library supplies, the needed supplies, we have a number of different lines in the budget, supply lines, and sometimes they get tapped out, sometimes they don't get spent. I think the thing that we have to remember here is we are dealing with a default budget. Our budget did not pass, and we need to make some cuts. And we believe that if there's any specific really necessary supplies for the library, we can get that out of another line, supply line. So we believe that we can hold off on that and put that through. The 19,000, we've got a lot of books in our libraries, and we get some, I belong to Derry Village Rotary, and we get books donated from the Derry Village Rotary. We thank them so much for that. And this is an item that we believe, once again, we can hold off and delay replacing some older books and bringing more new books for this year into the library. And our kids will have plenty of materials still in those packed libraries. Eliminate professional there's a couple of professional development. What I can stress again is there's different professional development lines, and some people use them some year and they don't use them the next year. We have other lines in the budget that if somebody needs PD, they're going to get their PD. So we suggest moving those forward. And the same thing with the PACE supplies. They can get those out of the ELA line for supplies, or they can get those out of the math line for supplies, depending if it's PACE Math or PACE ELA. So if they need supplies, they will get them. Everybody has been told that they need to conserve because of the not passing the budget and the default budget coming through. So so the state requires, in spite of the fact that this state doesn't believe in sidewalks in a lot of places, the state still only requires that we bus people within 2 miles of the school. We bus people
outside of 2 miles.
Outside of 2 miles, sorry. We bus people outside from 1 mile towards the school, as well as we do things like kids in the fairways get bused to Derry Village because you got to cross Route 28. And we haven't been able to find a crossing guard in how many years, Jane? A while. So there are 3 different situations here. Create a 2-mile radius for bus riders and keep the 5-6 students separate from the 7-8 students. So this would be, again, restructuring in that model that saves $164,500. the 5-6 and the 7-8 students would be riding different buses. In the model that saves $243,000, 5, 6, and 7, 8 would be on the same bus, and the 45-minute maximum ride would move to 50 minutes. Cliff also worked very closely with Chandra at the bus company, and they came up with a 3-tier model, which is no change to the bus radius, separate 5, 6, and 7, 8 buses for our students, and sticking with the 45-minute ride maximum, and that would be an addition, a reduction of $27,845. The administration suggests that we go with that model because we know that we've never been able to sell the model of making kids walk who live further than 1 mile. Reduction of 1 more administrator, which would be a net reduction of 2 administrators from the current staffing levels. The administration suggests we move forward with that. Reduction of a special ed facilitator. So when people look at what Robin Rios does as facilitator over at Pinkerton Academy, this is her job. She does meetings, 300 plus of them within a year. And the thought process, had our budget passed, that we would take one of the facilitators that would no longer be needed over at Derry Village and move that person to help out over at Pinkerton Academy. We've been doing this for years at that number. If we have to wait 1 more year because we got the default budget, we believe we can wait 1 more year for that to happen, and hopefully we would be able to do that somewhere down the road. We suggest we reduce that 1 teacher. Eliminate 2 math interventionists. We believe we've had 7 of them, and we're looking to do something different at the elementary level. We would love to be able to keep a 5-6 math interventionist and a 7-8. So we are not recommending that. We are not recommending eliminating the STEM teachers and replacing. We've had computer assistants teaching computers under Cliff's license, and we've been talking about that, and it's sort of out there, and our preference would be that we don't reduce these STEM teachers. We also are extremely excited to bring STEM into the elementary schools, so we suggest we don't move that forward. We have put the PACE program on the table many times since I've been here. It serves a small number of students, but it does a wonderful job for those high-achieving students. And we believe that we can continue to move forward with the math specialist, which would still be teaching 4th grade PACE at the elementary schools and could do some coaching as well. So we would like to keep that in there. And getting back to the increased class sizes, the state cap on class sizes is 30 students in 3rd grade through 8th grade. And we are not suggesting that we do that, but we wanted to put it on there so that people are aware of what is, again, when I do my superintendent report, one of the things you'll hear me emphasizing is things cost money. And there are expectations from this community of that these school board members and the school board members in the past have been doing for years and years, like busing people from the fairways over to Derry Village so they don't have to cross Route 28, busing within 1 and 2 miles when we don't have to do that. High school busing that we do not have to provide whatsoever, but we're concerned about kids not going to school, and class sizes that this school board has kept extremely low compared to what the state allows for decades. But I keep saying it costs money to do these things. So it's a little frustrating when somebody comes to the microphone and hollers at us because we're going to cut some program, and then in the very next sentence blames us for the increasing taxes in this town. And I think Derek Anderson, if we could have recorded what he did, well, we did record it, didn't we? I think hit the nail on the head. This has been generational. You've heard me say this at this meeting before. Why isn't Route 28 like when I lived in Salem and I could go 5 seconds and hit just about every retail and industrial store I could find? Why isn't 102 like Londonderry? Well, it was decided not to do that. But here we sit, and it does get a little frustrating sitting in these seats when we keep getting blamed for putting for a budget that the students and the families deserve. But the things that we can't do about the tax burden, it's very frustrating. So, get off my soapbox. We believe that if we're going to cut back on the teachers' computers and make them wait 1 more year for a new computer, that it wouldn't behoove us to reduce the 1 computer technician. Because we do believe that that will just cause an even double burden on the rest of the computer tech, so we don't think we should move that forward. Reduce 3 custodians. Under this plan, this closes Derry Village. Currently, we are completely filled with custodians. We do not need more custodians. If we stay with the restructuring and close the school, we will not need those positions in other schools. So we believe we should move that forward. Yes, we've thought of everything and we brought up everything, but nobody wants to lose secretaries. They are so important to our buildings and to our students and to the families coming in. We skipped over that one, but we wanted to put it on there. Reduce 4 reading math assistants. So when we did this structure, what we talked about is we have 21 reading assistant positions, of which 4 have been unfilled for this entire year. So we've been working with 17 reading assistants. What we thought to do that wouldn't raise the budget was we would look for 4 math assistants to help out in the area of math, with the understanding that if a reading specialist decided to move over, then we may have a few less reading, not specialists, I apologize, assistants. We might have a few less reading assistants, but we have not been able to fill those positions. Our suggestion is that we reduce 2 of those positions, which instead of 120 would be 60. And reduce 6 special education assistants. So this is the same type of thing. We have had 18 assistant positions available all year and then some. At times we've had more than that, and we've just recently hired 1 or 2 to get us back down to only 18 positions. How are we fulfilling IEPs, which are required by law? Well, a kindergarten assistant may need to leave that kindergarten class for a period and go down the hall and work with some special education students, because we have to make sure that we are in compliance. We have to make sure we are covering the IEPs, and if we can't find the people, I am extremely pleased that the town voted in both the AFSCME contract and the warrant 6 if it didn't pass, because our assistants are outstanding. We can't get enough of them, and we're hoping that with a little bit more pay, and the school board worked with that union to give them more monies over these next 3 years. We hope that maybe we can hire some more. So when you look at these special education assistant positions, this one, we have a little bit of a situation with the IDA money. Currently, we have, as I said, 18 unfilled positions. If we reduce that by 6, and we are suggesting we reduce that by 11, that would still leave 7 open positions. If we filled all 11, all of those 7 positions, and we got an 8th person, we could still hire that person. It would just then, rather than come out of the budget, it would come out of the IDEA budget. We don't always like to do that, because part of what gets done by these assistants is they bring money into the district through Medicaid. If they are not in the budget, they can't do that. So people may have to move around if we get to that point. But wouldn't that be great? Because that would mean that we are hiring people. So we suggest a reduction of 11 assistants for $330K, and I believe when you add that up, that will get us, we are looking for $967,321, and that would get us about $16,000 over that. So let's move to the scenario of existing structure, and you will have the benefit of everything that is the same. I will not repeat. I will just make a note of it. First and foremost, if we go back to the existing structure, we will not need to move, and we will not need moving expenses, so that is something that would come off of this budget. And as I said, with additions, because we would be keeping Derry Village open, it would require that $240,692, and you can see over there, that's all utilities and maintenance and so forth and so on that goes along with having that building. The first two are no-brainers. One's a reduction of 100, the other is an addition of almost 241. The next bunch, all the way down to reduce pay supplies, are all the same as in the other structure. So busing, strictly enforce the 1 mile radius for all bus riders. You heard me talk about that. Strictly enforce the 1 mile radius for elementary bus riders and create a 2 mile radius for middle school and high school riders, meaning if you were in middle school and high school, you'd have to walk to school. If you were less than 2 miles away, if you were in elementary school, you would have to walk. It would be the same as it is now. We are not suggesting putting that forward. We are saying yes to the administrator. So last year, the school board raised class sizes by 1 in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6, 7, and 8. We suggest you, instead of going back to reducing 1 in each of those, we keep what we had this year for 1 more year, and that would require the addition of 1 teacher to make that happen. We would need more teachers if we went back to 22, 23 class sizes, which would be an addition of 2 teachers. Again, we don't want to go with the state cap on the class sizes. We would like to, as we did with the other situation, keep the math specialist, but because we would keep Derry Village open, that would require the addition of one more teacher. Again, we are not looking to suggesting we reduce the PACE program. We would just use math specialists as we had decided to do this year anyways, as PACE teachers. Again, this would mean that PACE, those math specialists under this situation would teach 4th grade PACE and 5th grade PACE, and then they would do their coaching and so forth. So they'd have a little less time for that, but that way the 4th and 5th grade PACE program could continue. This says a reduction of 2 teachers, but that's just teachers that were not in the budget, because if we had gone to the restructuring, we would have needed to add an IEL program and a Project Me. If we stick with the existing structure, the Project Me program would stay at West and the IEL program would stay at Gilbert H. Hood, and we wouldn't need to add those 2 programs. We want to, again, suggest we keep the math interventionist at the 2 middle, this would be the 2 middle schools. And we would like to keep moving forward with STEM teachers in lieu of computer assistants. Again, with the reduction of the computers, stick with the computer technician and don't put that in the budget. We don't want to touch our secretaries. Again, we believe we could reduce 2 of the unfilled assistant positions in reading/math for a savings of $60,000 instead of $120,000. And in this scenario, to make the numbers work, we would need to reduce a couple positions less of the unfilled 18 special ed assistant positions, and that would get us to approximately $11,000 under that over that $967,321.
So before we open it up for public comment, does anybody on the board have questions what Austin just went through?
Yeah, I do. So thanks for running through that. I'm a little confused, though. So I think what we're looking at is different from what the proposals are. So the dollar amount is the same?
So are you looking at one particular scenario or just in general?
The shortfall was 967,321.
Correct.
But when you factor in keeping the current structure, there was an additional cost on what we received previously at 800 and, let me pull it up.
I guess the easiest way to...
So the existing, so it's 967,321, and then the additions going back in, if we kept it as is, were 823,692.
Right. What we did was we took the proposed budget, which was $103,484,475.
Yep.
Subtracted the default budget, which was $102,737,154. That gave us $747,321. The health insurance gap of $220,000, we took a gamble and went from the 20.1 to an 18%, hoping that the guaranteed maximum would come in lower. It did not. The default budget, as somebody said earlier on here, the default budget has all the union people in it, but again, it has it up to the 18 that we budgeted for. So for the union people, we have to make up 2.1%. And for the non-union people, we have to make up the whole 20.1% because non-union people are not allowed to go into the default budget. So that's where the 220 comes. And when you add that to the gap between the proposed budget and the approved budget, then the actual shortfall, as Jason said, is 967,321. And then it was just a matter of the math of adding back in, for instance, the 246.92 for all the utilities and maintenance, some additional teachers, but then the reductions of, and again, some of the things got reduced because we didn't need an aisle program and we didn't need an extra Project Me program. So even though we had to add some teachers to this, we were able to reduce others. And it was simply a, reduction problem.
Understood. Can you give us the total dollars for if we kept the existing structure and the total dollars for restructuring? Because what I'm hearing is you're saying it's the same dollar amount, and I'm confused by that.
If I may, because I think I understand what you're trying to, this is not, what we put together here does not say XXXX equals this and this will cover the default.
I understand, Cliff, but what I'm saying is what we got a few days ago to look at is not what I'm hearing right now, and if I'm confused, everybody out here is way more confused.
That's why I was trying to say this. This is a
I'm sorry for raising my voice, but I'm confused because the numbers don't make sense.
Saying that this isn't the exact same thing you got.
You're saying the number is 967 for each option. That's not possible.
No, it is possible. It's not the situation is simply, we wanted 103 million.
Understood.
We got 102 million. We needed to make up the guaranteed maximum. So in both of these situations, remember, we are dealing with we budgeted for 103, we got 102, we got to make up $1 million. Doesn't matter the situation between structuring or existing, we got to make up $1 million in both situations.
Yeah, the problem is, Austin, I think what Jason's getting at is when you go back to the 7-school model, you're adding additional costs that aren't in the current, the restructuring model. So like that $240,000, so it's like 900 plus the 240. Do you know what I mean? There's additional costs that we're adding above what you need to get to the default.
Yeah, like the 240 is not an option.
Right.
If we go with the 7-school model, you have to put that $240,000 back in.
The total nut does not add up. 1 plus 1 does not equal 2 here. That's all I'm saying.
So
it doesn't make sense to me, so I need it to be explained clear cut. What is the dollar amount for option A and what is the dollar amount for option B? Because I don't believe that it's the exact same dollar amount.
You're right, Jason, and if I could just use the transportation section there are 3 different options. You would never do all 3 of them. You have to pick the one that you want, and then we can plug that number into the formula to figure out how it covers the default budget. There are multiple things that we gave all of the different options. There's no scenario to cover that. We have to pick and choose the ones that we want that will make the 967,000.
Cliff, I understand, because when we were given this, I did the exact same thing, and I had to pick and choose what I thought instead of being presented something. I'm not understanding how the total number is the exact same. It doesn't make sense, because what I was given, there's also $823,692.37 for add backs. There's a delta there. It doesn't make sense to me.
So if I do a formula.
To me, the actual shortfall, if we keep the existing structure, 967,321. Going back to the default budget, add the health insurance gap. During the budgeting process, we took that gamble. We lost there, right? Then you add the $823,692.37 back in, those additions, to keep the current model. So, excuse my quick math, you're basically looking at 1.8 million versus 967,321.
So
that's what I'm saying. So what we need to make sure people understand is the existing model, if we keep the existing model, the shortfall is $1.8 million. If we continue on with restructuring, the shortfall is $967,321. There's a difference of over $800,000. What-
You have to add this in?
That's if you replace the STEM. So if you replace STEM, that's the addition, because pace with, whatever the option is.
There are certain things on each sheet that depending on which option we go to, you have no choice but to put back in. You know, if we go with the existing structure, like I said, you have to put back in those
It's
non-personnel costs.
1.8, the
That's
total
built
number is
in
$1.8 million.
to the deficit.
So,
But what if it's not? Because if this number is not, if this is the total number, but there's other numbers that could go into the need for whatever is happening in the restructuring, because there's costs that we don't have yet, transportation for one, the construction that goes on in the schools for another. What if all of these things, maybe there's something here that gets taken back out? That's my point.
It's possible.
I don't know, sorry. I don't know that, I'm having a hard time with the numbers because I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, we haven't even added in potential maintenance or repair costs, right? So you can keep that out, that provides context. I'm just trying to look at a pure dollar for dollar. Option A is X, option B is Y. That's what we need to see, right? Because I'm looking at this and, I mean, I've got some stuff I've highlighted, right? Like I was given an option à la carte, like I'm going to a steakhouse, what sides do I want? We need to understand what the difference is between the two options.
our task.
I don't see how it's the same
Our
dollar.
task was to figure out what we needed. The voters said, no, you're not getting your school district budget this year. I'll remind everybody that is old enough to know what the last superintendent did when this happened back in the 90s. And he looked to punish the voters and removed unified arts. And Brenda's told me about it a million times about what
But that was $2 million in 1994. That is a completely different delta. I'll use your words. It's a completely different delta than 750 in 2024 to 2 million plus, I don't know the exact number, in 1994. In PS, that budget only lost by 32 or 36 votes, which is a darn shame, because it did hurt.
Yeah, I
And I would
agree.
never support you doing that. I will go and have a fundraiser first.
And as you can see, we didn't do that. But our task, I understand. First of all, keeping Derry Village open. You heard the email that was given to David Clapp. There's roofing that needs to be there. Nothing was even in the 37 million for Derry Village. And there's yearly costs to keeping that. Again, Jane Samad has said this many years now, that it's the more buildings we have, the more maintenance that needs to be done, the more expenses you do. So yes, of course it's more expensive. Our task was to have a bottom line, and I don't know, maybe I did my Excel spreadsheet wrong, but I'm looking here and I've got B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, B8. And,
Hold on, let me, so this is how I interpret Jason's question and where we're at. So when you look at the 967 in both models, yes, we gotta come to that number no matter what, right? That's where we need to go to. So when you look at this particular worksheet that everyone has, on the additions column, there's costs on here that we incur above and beyond that 967 by going to the new by going back to the 7-school model. So I'll list them and you let me know. Like 240, we know that's non-operating, that's utility, that's all that non-operating, non-personnel costs. Excuse me. So that's 240. If you want to maintain the class sizes that we have as of today, you need another teacher at $102,000, right? Okay, that's that. So that's 967 plus 240 plus 102. Right? We agree? All right. If you go back to previous model where we go back one student, because we increased one student, like you said, this past budget, it would have been, it would be $204,000 to go back to the class size goals at the board. Exactly. And then the 102 is the need to bring back a specialist, right? That position? My
Elementary
sheet's
math.
cut off, my math
Yes,
specialist.
Math specialist.
So in the 175, I don't think is, this would be saying if you want to go back to the computer, get rid of STEM and go back to the computers, you're 175. So the net number would be 233. So what I think what Jason's saying is, you take the 967, you add back the stuff we just talked about, that's the true cost of going to back to the old model. That's how I interpret this spreadsheet, and let me know if I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't know. I did a subtraction problem for both of the scenarios. I had a total, and I had a bunch of reductions and additions. And when you put together those reductions and additions, you come out with a figure at the bottom. So I understand that you could have a total that says, you know, we need this much more or this much. I'm assuming that we took out more, and it does cost more to get the existing structure to under default.
So I guess the question would then be, what is the total value, the total dollar value of the cuts you made on option A and the total value of the cuts you made on option B? Because I'm not seeing how the number could be the same.
Could we just add that up right now? I mean, it's all right here.
I'm not looking at your spreadsheet. I'm looking at what this had all the options. So you kind of said, keep this, we don't recommend this.
You have multiple options here, so we can't choose every single option. And you were presenting it, you're saying, this is what the.
Yeah, so when I received this last week, my task was to find $967,000 if we kept with the restructuring, and then $967,000 plus $800.
Guys, when board members are speaking, please refrain from talking.
I guess that's what I don't understand. I don't understand. If you look at this document and you go down it has additions and deletions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't go through and look at restructuring and just do reductions, because I believe there was a couple of additions on the reduction sheet as well. But we looked at this is a menu. This is a what do you want? You know, what I want
to be told what you guys think, and then I want the board to weigh in on it. And what I'm seeing here is the math does not make sense to me. I'm sorry for my frustration. I'm generally
You get out a calculator and do the math and see it, because maybe I did something wrong in my Excel spreadsheet, but I can give you the formula.
But
I can send you my Excel spreadsheet and see if it's correct.
Austin, the math is not wrong. It's just the way it's presented, I think, is what Jason's getting at. The total's tied. That's not the question. The question is, in the first scenario for restructuring, we got the 967. We know that, right? There's no additional cost because that's what we budgeted for, right? In the second model, we're going back to all 7 schools, there's additional costs that need to be added in because they're not in the budget currently. And that's what he's trying to ask for is, you know, we got 967 in one scenario. We need to know the number in the second scenario when, what's that? When.
Yeah, we have the shortfall of 967,321. But if we keep the existing model with the way things are now, you have to add back in the non-personnel costs, 240,692.40. Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to get a total of like a baseline of money to keep things the way that they are now.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll just have to give it, we are going to have to give it to you in a different format because we did not, like, if you're looking at the existing structure, we did not, we were just putting them in as options and did not take advantage of all the savings. So I think I understand what you're saying. You want it in a different format of what we're suggesting that would be the actual
Yeah, I
cost
mean, I think
savings.
what we're saying is that where we should,
The different things that we would
yeah,
be putting.
I mean, we understand what we've been presented with here. What I'm trying to say is that the baseline that we should be starting at is the way things are now.
During the budget process, remember when we talked about closing DVS, there was a reallocation of funds, right? Some was going back into education, some was going into facilities. Where do those funds go? Because if the option to stay with the 7-school model, those funds then come back into play. They're real dollars again. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think we're overcomplicating this. So the addition, non-personnel, 240. If we maintain 23, 24 class sizes, 102. If we don't eliminate elementary math specialists, another 102. If we eliminate elementary STEM teachers and replace with 5 computer assistants, which is what we had prior to this past budget, that's a total of $619,000 additionally that we would have to be funding, correct? I think you get $100K from moving expenses, you get $400K from strictly enforcing the 1 mile radius. That's $500 out of the $620,000 that it gets negated. So now essentially you still have to find another $120,000 above what we would have to cut from if we continue on the restructuring program.
Okay. I apologize, Jason. Our task was not to complicate things. Our task was very simply to figure out how we are going to get to the default. And what we did was we added in, but there was 100,000 that was a plus for the existing because we don't have to move. So there's 100,000 that was in the budget that goes against that. We've got the 240 in there. We've got the 102 for the extra math specialists. We've got but then when you do the reductions, which was the task that I'm not trying to show that one is better than the other. I'm trying to show that we have to get under default or to the default, whether we go with restructuring or whether we go with existing. So I apologize, but that's what we did. We looked at both of these scenarios. We did them exactly the same. We did all the additions that we needed, and we did all the subtractions. And that's why some of the things are different, like how many special ed assistants that are unfilled we may need and so forth. So I've said so many times that keeping all of our buildings open is going to be more expensive. And as you said, we haven't even talked about fixing the capital improvements. Never mind that $240,000 to keep that school open just for the non-personnel stuff, that's every year. That's $250,000 every year just for those type of things, which means that's another it's probably $300,000 the following year. It's probably $350,000 the year after that with inflation and so forth. So if we can get that the way you want it, all I'm telling you is that if you go through the formula and you go through the math, we put the additions in and then we did the subtractions because our job was to come here with both scenarios at default or under.
Got it.
That's what we tried to do.
Thank you.
Mine. So, I mean, clearly, none of these decisions are going to be easy, but I see in both scenario that it's possible to get to the default. So I think the first question we need to ask is how we're going to proceed moving forward, because, and Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the RSA spells out that if the default budget is what gets voted in, the district has an opportunity to hold a special election, should the board decide that, to come back to the voters and ask for a different budget. And so essentially in that process, and maybe you take over from here or correct me if I'm wrong, but
Go ahead,
it would
you're doing
require
great.
what we've done at every budget season, which is generally in December, we have our hearing, our public hearing, which is generally during a school board night, and we have a hearing, we present the budget. And then after that, it would then require a second deliberative session for us to vote, or for the town to support that. And then it would then require a special election, which is just like we had a few weeks ago.
Correct.
And if, at that point, the budget gets accepted, that's pretty much the process, if we were to do that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You'd need to have a budget hearing 25 days before the deliberative session on a revised budget. Then you'd go ahead and prepare a budget. You'd go to a deliberative session, and then at least 28 days later, there'd be a vote by the public at a ballot vote.
Correct. I mean, based off of the numbers that are presented, and they would be difficult, there's a way to get below default without requiring a special election. I am as disappointed as anyone with the results of the election, but it seems pretty clear to me that, tax increases are not in a favorable mindset for many people right now. And if people want to say that we are listening to the voters, then this is what the voters gave us, is this budget, and I think we can get there either way. I think that's the first step in this process. From there, then yeah, we do need to figure out what are the options for restructuring, or do we reverse decision and continue on with operating 7 schools? I don't know if anyone else, I think that's the first decision we need to make.
Katie had something.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this, new with this. When I'm looking at this looking at the scenario for the existing structure, and then I see the maintain 23 to 24 class size, 102,000 net impact, and then the achieve 22, 23 class sizes of 204,000. Is that being counted in twice for the net budget, like the 204 and then also the 102 is getting counted in?
None of this is getting counted in. What I did was I said, I'm going to go through everything, give an explanation of what each line is, but I also wanted to give input from the school administrators of what we would prefer to see potentially move forward, or what we think is best to move forward. It's the school board decision. But no, part of the problem here is, like Cliff said with the transportation, you can pick from options, because again, it's a menu. If it was going to be on the restructure, and I think it was 100 and something, if we went to 2 miles, I forget what it was, 102, 200 and something. If we went, we could save more. So you wouldn't choose both of those. You would choose
so any one of us up
class
here
sizes, and it would be 102, or you'd choose the other class size, and then you'd have to add 204.
Okay, so all 7 of us up here are potentially going to come up with a different solution on how we could come to that number.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Or in the discussion, you start talking about this and you say, yeah, I agree, we'll hold off on new computers. Cliff's group can do their wonderful work and they can live with that. And everybody's pretty much, okay, then you move on and you move on and you move on down the list. And then you have bigger arguments about certain ones. I would rather see this, I would rather see that. You may have to vote on things, but we were not asked even to probably give our opinion, but we thought we would anyways. But it's the school board's decision to decide what you folks want to put in there to get us down to the default. These are just a bunch of examples, and yes, there's repetition there because we wanted to give choice as much as possible.
So I will open up to public discussion right now. We'll listen to your concerns. If you have questions, we'll answer them at a later point in time, but I will open it up right now. Thank you.
Danielle Cunha, 124 East Broadway. I'm hoping you can just answer this simple question. Is the default budget inclusive of what the school year looks like right now, or no? That we voted on to approve. So does that include Derry Village already? The new one does not. The new default budget does not include Derry Village. Okay, thank you.
The budget was written for the restructuring plan.
The budget doesn't include anything. It's not a budget.
Say that again?
The default budget doesn't include anything. The default budget is a number. That's all it is. It's not a budget. It's not an obligation to pay money for any particular purpose. The default budget is a calculation of a number based on the previous year's operating budget. That's all it is. It's not an alternative that somebody creates. It's created by fiction, law, which is the law, which says this is how you calculate the number that the district winds up with if they don't approve the operating budget. That's all it is. It's not a budget. It's a number. That's it. It's a bottom line number.
So the way that it's come up with is it's basically carries over the previous year's budget, and then there are certain things that, you know, you're contractually obligated to increase in it. Is that?
There's goes intas and goes outas. Yes, there are amounts that are included in the default budget and there are amounts that are excluded in the calculation, but it's a formula.
Yeah.
It's based on the prior year's operating budget, increased or decreased as the case may be by contracts and obligations and other matters that are mandated by law, and reduced as the case may be by one-time expenditures, which the school board decides what are those one-time expenditures. That's the definition of the default budget. So that's a complicated piece of business in a $103 million budget. But it was, you know, it's based on the prior year's operating budget. That's the number. But that number is simply a number that the board then has the authority to move within the lines of that prior year's operating budget essentially anywhere they want to. They can move it up or down and change the numbers and the lines, and those lines are function codes that are in that prior year's operating budget, not object codes, not codes that get right down to the nitty-gritty of we hire this person, we hire that person, et cetera. It's
But
broad open.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, I think part of your question is, which I think Michael was getting to, the 103 school district budget was created, excuse me, I'm getting a little dry mouth, was created with restructuring in mind, which is why I think getting to what Jason is talking about, there are added costs because we went with the restructuring and there were some savings. So there is more that we need to give up, for lack of a better way to put it, to get to default in existing as compared to restructuring because the budget was created on restructuring.
But
It has to do with last year's operating budget, and this current year's operating budget includes Derry Village.
No.
So, based on what,
Done that way.
am I good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on what you just said, if it's based on last year's operating budget, that includes Derry Village already.
It does. So I don't understand that idea. I mean, it should. The default budget would include all of the operations of the district in the present fiscal year, currently.
Okay.
Am I allowed to ask a question right now? Okay. So based on our current operating budget for this year, what do we expect to have left over at the end of this year of unspent money? And for the positions that you're talking about that we haven't been able to hire for, that's holding a dollar value. But if we're not actually spending that, why are we holding it in the budget?
Well, I think we talked about why we're, Kate, why we're holding in the budget. We obviously had intentions of filling all of those positions, and that's why moving forward, after looking at the number of unfilled positions, we're proposing eliminating some of those positions so we don't have as many unfilled. As far as any unspent funds that we're not spending this year, which there is probably going to be a surplus from Pinkerton, unspent positions that weren't filled, and other areas of the budget, that goes towards the end of year calculation, which is an unreserved fund balance, and the board would, typically I bring it forward to the board to see if they want to retain funds. I know there is an option that I've talked to Gordon about, particularly this year with the exterior of West Runningbrook, where that is an emergency that needs to be taken care of, looking at using some of the unspent funds to replace the exterior of that building. So there are options to do, but that's what we would do. We don't, when I create a budget and bring it forward to a board, I don't create it with surplus positions or overinflated numbers in order to have money left over at the end of the year. We budget for exact positions, exact number of students that are currently enrolled. But just sometimes the way the budget plays out, almost an entire year later, you will have some type of a surplus.
And I realize it's early to say, but what is that estimated overage at this point right now for this current operating year?
I've been working on that because we just got Pinkerton's final bill, and that's a very important number that plays into what that unreserved fund balance is. So I do have a financial report that's in the BA update later on in the budget presentation, or later on in the board presentation, that I can go over those numbers. But we will have a surplus. I'm not sure of the exact dollar amount, and I want to be really careful not to just throw out a guesstimate. I think I just want to be careful not to do that. So I'd rather be accurate in my numbers than giving an estimate that's not true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Important to note too, Jane, if we retain some of that unspent funds, it impacts the tax rate.
Sure. So we used a estimated dollar amount that we would planned on returning when we were doing tax rate setting. So if we don't return, I believe it might have been 2 million. So if we don't return that and you retain it or spend it, then yes, it's going to impact your tax rate next year. So either way, you have your retained that you carried over this year and whatever unspent funds that you have at the end of this year as well. But the Pinkerton number is significant for this year. And I also, as part of my BA update, I had not included yet the calculation for the retirees, the end of year retiree incentive. So that's not been included, but I can give you an estimate on that.
Gordon, I have a quick question for you. So when we look at the option 2 here, obviously we gotta get to the 967 to get down to the default, right? Any additional costs that aren't in the 103 have to be added back in addition to that 967, because they're not in the 103, correct?
The 103, I'm sorry.
That's our current, that's the budget that just failed.
Oh, or the 1.1 million.
103, yeah.
103 million.
Yeah.
So
the delta right now is 967 between that and the default. But we have costs in that 103 that are no longer in that 103 anymore. They have to be added back because Derry Village is, if it was to come back,
The proposed budget did not include Derry Village.
Right.
That's what I'm
That's
getting at.
that's the point we're trying to make. The costs that are in the addition column, those are in addition to the 967. They have to be factored in when you get down to the default budget. That's the only point we were trying to make.
I recognize that.
Okay.
I understand what you folks are saying.
Okay.
I think the point that, I think the only issue with regard to these numbers, at least the sheets that were handed out in the back, I have not seen these before tonight, by the way, but that's all right. But I think the sheets and the presentation was simply the fact that there were different parts of the menu that were chosen and recommended based on whether or not you did the scenario for restructuring or the scenario for the existing structure. So there were different parts of the menu, as you mentioned before. Were we going to get the full filet mignon, or were we going to get the 6-ounce filet? And I heard Austin doing different presentations for the and different, maybe the 6-ounce filet if the Derry Village remained open, you know, so to cut more costs elsewhere in the proposals that he was doing. And I think it's a matter of getting what those recommendations were in the event that scenario of keeping the Derry Village open was the scenario that you chose to pursue. That's all.
Yeah, that's why I'd asked for the total of the total of each amount of cuts per scenario.
And I think they're different.
Yes.
Exactly. And the recommendations of what those differences are is the thing that that you're looking for. And it's not that they weren't there. It's just that they were being read off quickly, and maybe that you know, that just needs to be you know, a document that's shared with everybody, right?
Correct.
And look it over. Yeah.
Thank you.
So first, I have a question, and then I kind of want to see if I understand this correctly. When is the deadline for?
Kearney, can you just state your name and address for the record?
Oh, you got to do that twice. Kearney Picorni and 294.5 Hampstead Road. When is the deadline for when this has to be in and approved and finalized by? And then just, I want to try to summarize what I'm hearing here. Basically, you're saying the last year's budget, Derry Village was in there, and we had planned to then close Derry Village. So now that the budget has failed, we have the default budget that does technically have Derry Village in it, but if we continue with the path of closing Derry Village, then we save all of the money that from not spreading ourselves too thin, not having to have all those teachers there, all of the electricity costs. We're saving all of that money from closing Derry Village that's originally in this default budget that we can then use to fund the gap between what we need, that $1 million+ so then we don't have to cut as many different programs that we currently have, because we're taking that money from closing Derry Village to then fill that surplus. Am I understanding that correctly?
No.
I don't know that it's that simple.
No.
I just want to answer the first question. What the administration needs, specifically Kathy Kennedy and our teachers and so forth, is a decision tonight on, are we going to continue with restructuring? Are we going with existing? Because that's all about contracts, and April 15th is coming up real quick. So the main thing that needs to be decided tonight is, are we continuing on or what? And then the budget situation, of course, we need to get
When's the deadline?
figured out sooner than later, but
When's the deadline? Is there a specific deadline of when that has to be done and completed by?
I don't know if, Jane, you have a
Rather than later.
sooner than later.
What I would recommend is coming up with that plan of what that looks like and bringing that back to the board to discuss that.
I wanted to refrain from answering questions, but I mentioned at the beginning of the start that we would like to do it sooner rather than later, and I think I mentioned next Tuesday to finalize the budget. And tonight would be, bare minimum, is to decide what our path forward is. That's how I started off this whole section of the discussion. And the question was that go through the numbers. We accommodated that, and Austin went to that part of the discussion.
But at the end of the day, the savings that we're receiving from closing Derry Village and not spreading our resources too thin is still valid and is still that number. I don't know the exact number. That number hasn't changed, the amount of savings from closing Derry Village. No. Okay. You guys have.
Good evening. Richard Tripp, 46 Wyndham Road. I'd like to follow up on Katie's question. Jane, How much was last year's unspent funds, the unreserved money?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look that up for you right now.
Could you give us within $1 million?
I believe it was in the $4 million range.
Oh.
But I'm going to look that up because we should all learn our lessons from other districts, speaking and not knowing the numbers correctly. So I want to make sure that I have them correct.
Well, while you're doing that, it seems to me, since I follow this, that usually the school board overestimates their budget by several $1 million. And right now, you pretty much know what your budget is because it's the default budget. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that the school board's budget is a bottom line budget, which means you can spend it pretty much any way you want. You know, so while this is a really interesting discussion, you know, you already know what your budget's going to be, and you know you can figure out, you know, how you're going to spend it later on. And I suspect you still come up with $2 or $3 million unspent. You know, so like I said, this is a great discussion, but I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. And Jane?
Richard, the unassigned fund balance at the end of June 30th of 2023 was $4,786,592. We put out a warrant article that passed, and that was $1.8 million that was voted to use for replacement of 2 roofs from the surplus. And the amount so that remained, or the remaining amount to reduce taxes was $2,186,592, and we retained $800,000. As just a note, each year, you know, Gordon knows better than I, it is a paper exercise of the numbers. They roll over, so your retained funds are part of your calculation each year that's rolling over. And I would disagree that we overinflate our budget.
Well, I didn't say
don't do
overinflate, that you include items in the budget that aren't spent.
Do you mean, for example, the positions that weren't filled this year? Is that what you're referring to?
I don't know what $4.78 million consists of, but it seems like there's money that's not spent.
Sure.
In the amount of $4.78 million.
Sure, and part of that, we had some revenue surplus last year, the special education, we received a surplus in that. We also, when I'm projecting Pinkerton, I do my best using actual students and promote them. The board and fiscal advisory, I don't know if Bruce left, but fiscal advisory also looks at that, and we analyze trends, and we reduce that number to get even closer. So a lot of times it's surplus from students who have left Pinkerton, graduated early from Pinkerton. So there's a lot of different reasons why there may be a surplus. And yes, there are times where positions don't get filled, but we don't keep them in the budget if we don't plan on having those positions and they're not necessary. So
yeah, I understand that a budget is your best estimate of what you need to operate the schools. And that is obvious. Your best estimate has a lot of moving parts in it. You know, the 20% raise in healthcare. You know, that's something I don't know whether you had anticipated that or not. But you know, if it had came in at 10%, you would have, you know, an excess. You know. So I have one more question.
Richard, we got to wrap it up, please.
She was talking using my time.
It's been read for a little while.
Rewind the clock. All right. So can you give me an estimate of what the unreserved fund balance typically is in a year? It doesn't have to be exact.
Sure. It can range from 2 million. It could go up as, in the $4 million range,
Yeah?
which is.
Well, 2 to 4 million, that's good.
Sure.
Thank you.
And it's an allowable amount based on the dollar amount of our budget.
Great.
Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive. I thought this was going to be easy. So the way I'm glad you brought it up, Jason. So the way I understand it is you've got to cut $967,000 out of the budget because of how the voters voted. And then, but if you go with keeping Derry Village open, it's going to be like another $900,000. So am I correct that you're going to have to cut $1.8 million if you keep Derry Village open?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's how I interpret the numbers.
That's the way I look at it too. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I read this and I was like, what is this? And I went through it. And I appreciate, Austin saying that it's a menu, which it should be. But, from my point of view, I think the administration should have just come forward and say, okay, these are the cuts that we need to make. And, maybe on a separate sheet, say these things are to be considered, and just presented you with that and made it a little bit easier, but that's just me. I think it's more important right now to decide on your restructuring. I think it's important. I think this is all the more reason to close Derry Village because of another $900,000 that you need to spend. And, so restructuring should be number one, and, then work on your budget. I just, this is kind of crazy, but anyway, wish you guys a lot of luck.
Thanks, Tom.
You're absolutely right. I think that we need to recenter this conversation to the restructuring plan. The budget we can work out, but we need to figure out what we're doing next year and how much that's going to cost. And it's also important with the restructuring plan to note that we're not just talking about the money that we have to make up for next year in the budget, but we're also talking about the additional expenses that would need to go into a 7th school building if it is to remain open for a longer term. So that's really what we need to be talking about here.
Tina?
Tina Guilford, Beaver Lake Road. So I sat here while you were going through your whole presentation, Austin, and what I realized as I sit here and looking at what you were doing, you went off the 103 and you did pluses and minuses to get it down to the 102. I got that. What I don't know is I don't know exactly what pluses and minuses you chose. So without knowing exactly which ones you chose, I don't know how you got to the 16K under or the 11K under. And I think we kind of needed to know exactly what it was you were choosing off the menu, because that's how you made it sound.
So I tried as I went through to say, yes, keep that in, or no, we didn't want to, go to the 2 mile mark, so we said we didn't put that in. But it is the school board that is going to make the decision on that. So I just gave them some feedback from the administration, but the school, when it comes to this budget, it is definitely something that is in the purview of the school board. So
I got that, but you're sitting over here saying there's a delta of $823,000 to keep Derry Village open. I don't understand how you get to that number, and I'll tell you why. Because there's one line that says maintain the 2023-2024 class size, 104,000. Flip the page and there's another line to achieve the 2022-2023 class sizes of 204. You can't do both. You have to do one.
Correct, which is...
So what I'm saying is we don't know the menu Austin chose because he didn't mark it off as he went.
Correct, which is why I said the 620 is is a probably more accurate number than the 820. Or if you were to add 2 teachers back as opposed to the 1 teacher, then it would be $722,000. So
Correct.
those are, so it's 620 or 720. It's not 860. But I think the point is that if we reverse the decision to go back to to keep all schools open, there will be this $967,000 gap that we have in the default budget currently, plus anything that it takes to return back to that, which is, again, the $240,000 in non-personal costs, either 1 teacher or 2 teacher, which is 102 or 104 respectively. Then, if you eliminated elementary math specialists, you add in another teacher at 102, and then if you eliminate elementary STEM, you would add in 175,000.
Correct. And all I'm saying is that we were trying to follow his recommendations to see where he was getting, and we're just not able to because some of them he blew through, and I don't know which ones he chose because I can't get to the math he made. That's all.
All right, I guess I'll open up for board discussion now. One more, okay.
Good evening, Dan McKenna, 6 South Main Street. I think the one thing that everybody agrees on tonight is there's a lot of confusion about the numbers. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is not make a decision tonight. And I know for contracts it's important, and we need to get the timeline, so I hope you take David's previous suggestion and set a meeting to come back next Tuesday and make a decision next Tuesday. And I hear a lot of the people in the room tonight who came out and said you just got to keep moving forward with the plan you had. But with all due respect, all of the warrant articles, besides the assistance contract, and not moving forward with the restructuring, lost. And they lost by a lot. And the budget lost for the first time since when I had hair. And so I think it would be wise to take a minute and to think. And not only is there confusion, it seems, on the board about the numbers, but these sheets are the first time anyone in the public has seen any numbers. And given the results of the election, I think it's clear that people want to have more input and be heard. And I think you should give the voters a chance next week to know that these are the options that are on the table, and allow people to come talk to you and give you some input before you make this decision. And also, I don't know where in the budget is the money for the strategic plan, but you're paying a strategic planning committee to come talk, I assume, about education and curriculum and the long-term goals of this district. And I think it would make sense, in my opinion, to make sure that your short-term goals and your long-term goals are aligning. And maybe that means keeping the district the way it is for a year, to make sure that our educational goals align with what we're trying to do long-term, curriculum and instruction, before you make giant changes to the curriculum and instruction while you're starting that long-term planning process. But either way, whether you decide to restructure or not restructure, I think you should take another week, make sure everyone agrees on what the numbers are, what the additions and subtractions for each scenario is, and let the public have an opportunity to weigh in on that as well. And the last thing is, I don't think we should just say, hey, we're going to accept the default and just move forward with that. I think in the discussion you have next Tuesday, if you do that, you can also include, maybe it makes sense to go back to the voters. I know the budget just failed, but I do think if you went back with a different budget, they'd get a different result. So I hope you'll consider waiting till next week so everybody's on the same page, everyone agrees what the numbers are, and that the public has a chance to see the numbers before you make a decision. Thanks.
If I may, and I'll start with all due respect. Is there anybody here that doesn't believe if we keep 7 schools open instead of 6, it's going to cost more money? How much? It's going to cost more money. I'm not saying anything about, well, how much, Jason? 800 and whatever? I'm not saying, hang on. I'm not saying anything about that. We heard the voters. You're 100% correct. No, no, no,
Yes, yes.
and no. And then, yes, yes, yes. So I believe the school board has information. They also have information about what they've been talking about for a year and a half, or some of these members a year, some of these members for 2 years. And I don't know how to reemphasize this enough. We've been making our teaching staff wait a lot longer. Normally, the teachers wouldn't even be worrying about anything at this stage of the game because everything would be the same, and they'd just be expecting their contract to come out and say, I'm going to be a such and such teacher at such and such. But we have a ridiculous amount of decisions that have to be made in a short amount of time. And I don't know how, that's why I didn't want to get into this budget discussion. We can get to the default budget. We have to. We don't have a choice. I don't want to go to a deliberative session and have some voter come up and say, I want to drop another $1 million out of the budget. I don't think in this right now, with when I saw what the vote that came across, I don't feel very comfortable. I believe our lawyer has given us that advice that, you know, we're going through this whole process again, and yeah, that budget could be dropped by another $1 million. I don't think that's good for our kids, but a decision needs to be made, and so that we can move forward as a district just as we are, or moving forward with the restructuring process so that we can look at turning preliminary assignments into real assignments or going back to the assignments or the way they were. But we've got a lot of work to do no matter what happens. And it's the end of March, and now you're talking the beginning of April. And contracts don't just make themselves overnight. They have to be produced. That takes time. We've got a lot of staff and a lot of people. And that's when mistakes get made, too. Some teachers might get an extra bonus in there, you know, an extra zero on there. There you go, Holly. But we need a decision tonight about where we're going. It's going to cost money. We don't have any money. Thank you very much. We don't have any money. We don't have money to keep our buildings open. We don't have money to fix them up. We don't have anything. I understand that this town is not happy, and I do believe that we need to try to build up trust again. But one of those ways is the school board making a decision about where this district is going. Are we sticking with the restructuring or not? And so that we as administrative group and our staff can move forward, and we all know what the future is going to be.
Awesome. Let's wrap up. Let the public, let them wrap up, and we'll get into our discussion next.
Erica Cohen, 26 Tenney Road. So I just have a quick comment. I'm old enough to remember the singer Tom Lehrer and the song New Math. And if it's really confusing to me as I'm sitting here with these papers in front of me, imagine how confusing it is to the people watching online that don't have these papers. If you want to build up the public's trust, the first thing you need to do is provide these things online and in advance so that people can trust you in part by seeing what they're looking at and having a chance to digest it and think about it, because even having it here but just getting it when we walked in is confusing. So that's not directly about this meeting, but I think it's something going forward that would be super helpful.
I have no idea how this works. How does it, oh, it already worked. So, I'm
Name
Laura
and
Watson. I live at 10 Morningside Drive. I just wanted to say, and Austin, you basically just stole my thunder of what I was coming up here to say, but I really do feel a decision has to be made tonight. I teach at Barca. I have children who are at Hood. All of these children are so distressed over where they're going, and all I hear all day long from the 4th and 5th graders especially, and you know, they're afraid that they're going to lose their friends, or they have, you know, issues with kids at other schools, and are we going to be together and are we not going to be together? And they're so nervous. And another week is really a lot for them. So I was just going to say, I really do feel that it should be decided tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess what I would say is we started off this conversation by phrasing, I started off by phrasing the question, so kind of phrasing how we move forward is tonight we probably should be able to make a decision on what path we're going down, whether it's restructuring or closure, restructuring and closure, or keeping all 7 schools open. And then I talked about the budget piece, going through the numbers, asking questions, and then probably having another meeting the following week, which would make sense. I totally agree with that method. I'd like to hear what other board members think about that, the kind of how you want to proceed. But that would be my recommendation. But obviously, you guys speak up as well.
I agree with Austin. We need to go back and redevelop trust and credibility with the community. I'm sorry that you've lost that in us. It wasn't intentional on anybody's part. People wanted to do what they thought was right. I was on the opposite side. I still think what I fought for was right. I understand a great deal of work, time and effort has been dedicated to putting into the plan, but it still feels rushed to me. I know that you've seen, I don't appreciate that. I know that you've heard about this plan since 2017, but you haven't heard about this specific plan. There were different plans in the plans. Different concepts. This plan that we're looking at now, the reconsolidation plan, was decided a year ago in earnest. And it's been worked on over the past year. To me, it feels like we dumped 7 jigsaw puzzles onto a table, mixed them up, and then said, let's figure it out. Put them back together. So I take some pieces and I find an edge. This is great, I got an edge. Katie takes some pieces and she gets a middle, great. But then we get some pieces together and none of them go into the right puzzle. We got puzzle 1, puzzle 2, puzzle 3, puzzle 4, you get the picture. We've had a short time to figure out where those puzzles all go. A year is really not a long time to figure out all of these moving pieces. We've moved from curriculum to transportation to we need to fix this, hold on, we got to fix this other thing right now. Where are teachers going to go, where are kids going to go, let's redistrict, let's hire a consultant. We've hired so many consultants outside of the budget already. We just hired a strategic plan consultant, which I fully supported, for $71 million. That wasn't in the budget. But I supported it because we need it. We need that support to move forward and that direction. Why do we need to move at warp speed right now with a plan that's really not ready? We put the cart well before the horse. Again, I know I've said that a million times. I believe we need to pause, work with the consultant, who will also work with the community, our staff, town officials, et cetera, and then move forward in a more concise way with buy-in from everybody. I know we need renovations. I know we need repairs. I know we need a budget. But the community voted, and those votes were really clear. Not since 1994 have we lost a budget. We need to develop trust and credibility as a board, as a district, with the voters, with the families, and with the community. I have faith in this community. I believe with a pause in the consolidation, working with a strategic plan consultant, we can move forward in a way that this community can support. I truly believe the support is here for our schools and our staff and our children, but people need to feel it has value and is transparent, and their voices are being heard. Trust is earned, and I know we have a lot of work to do to regain it. I am confident that with some effort and actively listening to the community, the healing can begin. We have a common thread, our children, and another common thread, our community. The impossible can be accomplished if we can remember why we're here. So you know where I stand.
I would also, tricky. You know, in line with that, we absolutely do need to make sure that our community trusts the school board and the decisions that we're making. The school board, this past school board was able to come to us and ask us to spend $107 million. Right now, we just learned that there can be upwards of $4 million left over at the end of a budget. We need $2 million to help West Runningbrook with the banding, and then we need an additional less than $1 million to keep Derry Village open. If we're going to listen to our voters, we had a petition out there. We got 426 registered signatures. When it actually went to vote, when this warrant article was put on that ballot, we had 1,897 citizens that came out to vote that said they do not want this restructuring plan. We need to listen to them, and we need to make that happen. We all just said we can make it happen. Let's listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, I have supported the restructuring from when I joined this board. I personally think that there has been a lot of work put into this. I mean, I know that I have talked to a lot of teachers that have put a tremendous amount of work into this plan. They think it's a good plan. They're excited about it. This is a better way to utilize our buildings. I mean, when we talk about keeping Derry Village open, it's not just about the annual operating expenses. All of these buildings need multi-million-dollar improvements. You know, we have over 1,000 empty seats in this district right now. We have the ability to close a school and not have to put, you know, millions of dollars into repairs or renovations into that building and still keep class sizes lower than they are now, because we're not utilizing the space in the middle schools. You know, the enrollment in the district has dropped by 1,000 kids over the last, 20 years. We have empty seats in every building. We have 570 empty elementary seats, and we have 560 empty middle school seats. The trouble with that is they're split between the two types of schools. There's no way we can close an elementary without the 4 elementaries being over capacity at K-5, and there's obviously nothing we can do about the empty seats at the middle schools without finding a way to move more kids over into those buildings. This, I think, has always been a sensible plan to solve that problem without having to, alter the buildings that we have or build a new building that's to the size that we need today. If you move the 5th graders over into the middle schools, then that gives you the ability to close an elementary school, better utilize your middle school space. That's going to save you annual operating expenses. It's going to save millions of dollars in capital improvement expenses. And I don't think that it has a negative impact on education. I mean, I'm a big fan of this 5-6 school model. My son is in 4th grade. He's going to go to this school next year. I'm excited for him to do that. I think that at the 5th grade level, I think these kids are ready for a little bit more than that one classroom elementary school. These guys have put a ton of work into what this 5-6 school is going to be. And not just these guys at the SAU office, but teachers, building administrators, parents, community members. This has been a collaborative process. These guys had, curriculum meetings where anybody could have signed up to participate in these meetings. So I don't really think it's fair to say that there hasn't been community input. So, at the end of the day, enrollment is predicted to basically maintain where it is now. There's no huge spike coming that's going to fill these buildings back up, and we are spending tremendous amounts of money on empty space. So to me, this seems like really the only plan to tackle that, reduce our expenses both annually and in capital expenses without impacting education. So that's my opinion.
good. Go ahead.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I won't add much more than what Michael says. I agree with just about everything he said. What it really comes down to is the deferred maintenance and the long-term, the maintenance that, and the renovation costs that would need to happen for Derry Village to be viable long-term is more than this district can handle. And we have, it just, there's no options to fill that void at this point in time. And it's just not financially responsible to dump $30 to $40 million into a school that, just needs to be replaced. Or, we talked about building a school, but at this point, the closure needs to happen because we can't afford $30 to $40 million. Because what I heard on election day, and it was very humbling, by the way, that people's taxes are way too high. I don't see how keeping Derry Village open and doing renovation costs will alleviate that problem in the current state that we're in. Hopefully this Bill 1583 will see some long-term gain from that, but in the current situation that we're at, we do not have the funds or the wherewithal to get that done. And as Michael said, the 5, 6, 7, 8 model is the only model that really fits within our capacity limits that we have. So that's where I stand, and I think I've been pretty consistent for a long time on that. And I don't see a need to change that decision. But I think as a board, we need to obviously go through it and understand what everyone's opinions are and try to find some sort of compromise. So I guess what I would ask is, what does a pause accomplish? I think it just delays the inevitable. I think for the last 10, 15 years, we've been kind of paused, and haven't moved things forward, and we've just really been in a holding pattern, and the problems just keep on getting worse and worse and worse, and the costs keep going up, up, and up. So without droning on here, that's where I'm at.
So I'm going to move to continue with the restructuring plan. Put it on the table.
Can I ask a question before we do that? So we chose to close Derry Village based on the hopes that that was going to be the home of a new school. It was the understanding that I had. Jonathan, you're shaking your head, so obviously that was not. But if we've just spent $71,000 for a strategic planning company, and we all know I'm a big supporter of keeping all of our schools open, is Derry Village in fact the best school to close? You talk about the conditions of Grinnell. Derry Village has more room for expansion. Like, are we looking at this big picture of 10 years down the line? Or are we just being short-sighted and looking at this 1 year? And when I look at the results of the vote, I look at it that our town feels like we're not being heard, that when you look at the capital improvements, people were behind that, but there was so much other stuff going on that you didn't get the numbers that you needed. People in this town are very okay with investing in our schools and investing in our students, but it was the way that this last board went about it that you didn't get that support that you needed. So I really think that you need to reconsider, again, looking at the 1,897 citizens that came out and said, we do not want this restructuring plan. You need to take that seriously, and you need to understand that we are willing to invest in our schools and we are willing to pay, but we don't want that way. So I understand that a lot of work has been done for years, that you've spent a lot of time, but you have to have a lot of weight into what those people are saying and what they want.
So Katie, to answer your question, the board, not this prior board, the two prior boards made the decision to move forward with the restructuring. And then June 30th of last year, it was decided that Derry Village would be the school to close. And then fast forward to this past fall, the last board voted to put on the warrant articles a new school and $37 million in capital improvement plan that were options for the voters to choose from. There was no, and it was said every step of the way that each warrant article was independent of each other. So if you wanted just a new school, you could have just voted for a new school. If you just wanted the capital improvements, you could have just voted for the capital improvements. If you wanted a mix or match of that and all the other things, then you could have voted for those things as well. But the decision to restructure was independent, because when we started this process a few years ago, we made the decision to not put a new school on the budget and to only do the 1.7 in roof replacements in the $800,000 in additional repairs that were overwhelmingly supported. So the restructuring was a decision that was made over a year ago, and was always going to be the case, unless there is a new board that is sitting that reverses that decision, which is, again, what a lot of people are asking for us to make a decision tonight is, do we continue on with the restructuring, which has been voted on? And I don't believe there needs to be another motion to continue that. The motion would be to reverse that decision and to move forward with going back to the existing and keeping 7 schools open.
Well, it is my opinion, if you go against Warrant Article 7 and what those voters said, you are absolutely saying and setting the tone that you don't care what our voters are voting on.
So the question I would ask is, at the deliberative, we had asked to put a financial impact on the petition, and we were told we couldn't do that. So I always wonder, and I'm not saying this is swaying my decision, but the question I have for myself is, if I was a voter going in there and I saw the current petition the way it was written, but then below I said, if this is approved, this is the impact it will have on the district, I often wonder what that would look like from a vote perspective. But I will never know, because we were told we couldn't do that at the deliberative. But I really, and I'm not saying it would affect everybody, but sure it would make people think. Like, if taxes is a big issue, and it sounds like it is, people should know what the alternative is and what it will cost to keep Derry Village open when they voted on that warrant article.
Well, the school board did put their mark on it by saying not recommended, and the town still voted with 1,897 votes saying that they do not want this restructuring plan. There may not have been a dollar value on that, but the school board made their mark when they put not recommended by the school board, and still 1,897 voters came out and said, we do not want this restructuring plan.
All right, I hear you. I think at this point in time, we're just going in circles. Why don't we, I agree with what you're saying, Jonathan, but I think at this point, we need to have a third vote on this. I think at this point in time, we're at that point where we have new board members. We want to hear their thoughts and hear their vote. And unless anyone disagrees with me, I know Jason tried to make a motion, so I will accept a motion if there is one on the floor.
What motion?
Well, I think what Jonathan was getting at is right now, we are on the path toward restructuring. There would need to be a motion to overturn that. So if
I'll
someone would
make
like-
a motion to overturn the restructuring plan, at least as a pause, until we work through the strategic plan company and see where they will work with the community. They'll talk to the community. It's not us, it's that planning company, those consultants talking to the community, and they will tell them what they really want. They're not telling us, they're not telling Austin, they're telling the planner, who will reach out to the community in large nets. Want to second it?
I second that.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll take a roll call vote. Wilbert?
He said yes.
Yes, okay. Katie?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Jason?
No.
Michael?
No.
Jonathan?
No.
The board votes, chair votes no. What a three. So I think at this point, if everyone's amenable to next Tuesday to discuss the budget numbers and finalize our budget, I'll ask you guys if you're good with that. Next Tuesday, is that April 2nd? April 2nd.
Works for me.
Jonathan?
That works for me.
One thing.
I'm good.
Wilbert, does that work for you? April 2nd,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Okay. Katie, does that work for you? Okay. Brenda, does that work for you? Huh?
I don't know.
Okay. Just let me know when you will know.
I might be there and I might not.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll schedule the budget meeting April 2nd, 6 o'clock at West Running Brook. So whatever that proper notice period. Nope, no non-public. Yep.
David, just if I may, on one thing about your budget and all of your options. I know you had a presentation this evening about the West Running Brook shell. And I had previously provided information regarding the ability to have a special school district meeting in the event, essentially a question about whether or not the bond could be reconsidered. And I said no, not in its present form, because you can't, the court wouldn't allow that. But to the extent that there is an emergency situation in a building that's less than what was done, there may be a possibility that the court would provide an option for you to have a special meeting with respect to the bond or a proposal for the renovation of that building only. That's a possibility. I'm not saying it's no lead pipe cinch, but I wanted to make sure that I presented that to you tonight publicly, so you knew that that was an option. Potentially, I don't, we need to talk about it in greater detail, and maybe we could do that at that meeting prior, and I talk to you in non-public about some of the issues that are involved in that.
Sounds good.
I'm not trying to invite myself to a meeting. I've been to plenty of meetings, but by the same token, I think there's some information that you might, benefit from.
Okay, great. I appreciate it, Gordon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
So we got the business administrator update. Okay, personnel. Okay. Austin and Jane are going to pass on their reports due to the timing right now, so we're going to go to personnel.
So I have 5 resignations that I would like the board to accept with regret. Natasha Baker, teacher, Grinnell Elementary School. Anna Casey, special education teacher, Gilbert H. Hood Middle School. Jillian Haggett, special education teacher, Gilbert H. Hood Middle School. Holly McCaskill, math teacher, West Running Brook Middle School. And Catherine Riley, science teacher, West Running Brook Middle School.
Move to accept with regret. Thanks for the service to the districts.
All right, first by Jason.
Seconded with regret. Thank you for your service to the district.
Second by Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, 7-0.
And I have 3 nominations that I'm hoping you will accept and welcome to the Derry Cooperative School District. Jessica Anderson is an ESOL teacher for the district. Stephanie Kelly, special education teacher for the district. And Lisa Temple, school psychologist, district.
Move to accept those nominations.
Second.
First by Jason, second by Jonathan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 7-0.
Thank you.
I don't have any FYIs, so unless anybody else does.
I'd just like to recognize the students at Grinnell for their amazing colonial fair. It was fabulous. I talked to so many great students who knew exactly how to fix walls with clay and fire and brushes inside, branches inside. It was very impressive. They did a really good job, talked about how to cook food, how to preserve food, dig holes, stays cold. I was very impressed with their knowledge, and I loved being there, so that was great. And it was also great to read this week to the kids as well.
Yeah. I also went to the Colonial Fair. I thought it was great. My son was not happy to see me randomly show up in his gymnasium, but the kids did a great job. And also, it seems like eons ago now, but congratulations to the kids from Hood on their production of The Little Mermaid. We went on Friday night, and it was a really fantastic show.
All right, we'll move on to committees. We'll start the manifest.
I move to accept the manifest in a grand total of $8,115,822.34. That consists of general payroll of $1,133,350.17 and general expenses of $6,982,472.17.
First by Jonathan,
Second.
second by Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 7-0. Any other committee updates? I don't think we got anything else.
New business? Is this, or is committees? Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
You can go without anyone. All right, so I guess nothing other business? You good?
I just wanted to bring back up the resolution that I brought up last board meeting. I actually do, I'm in favor of actually writing up something like that, that does call for adequate funding at, all levels, and calling on support from our elected representatives as well, so that hopefully, that does help continue to push the momentum, and whether that is the House bill that was mentioned by one of our representatives tonight, or whatever. I think we need to work towards a solution for that as well. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Jonathan. So just in conclusion, before we adjourn, so what I will do is, at some point before the weekend, I'll send out the committees that we have, and I'd appreciate an email back with you guys' top 3 that you would want to be on. If you have any questions on what is involved with those committees, please let me know.
You're gonna need more than top 3.
Huh?
You're gonna need more than top 3. Everyone's gonna serve on like 5 or 6 of them.
All right, well, they give their top 3 that they prefer to be on, and then we'll redistribute from there.
I think you can probably, we'll give you a list of the active committees and you can rank them.
If you get that to me by the weekend, we'll go through that and figure something out for our following week on that, and get everyone set up for that. I think that's all I have, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
First by Jason, second by Jonathan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. Thanks.